And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, attention to roll call.
That's right, everybody. Good morning. It's Friday, 8:05 live Eastern Time. For me, it's 6:05 Mountain Time. I'm in the great state of Arizona. I'm actually in Sedona. If anybody has an opportunity to ever check it out, it's an amazing place. It's all about vortex, and you can climb mountains there. I did it with my kids. Absolutely outstanding. The sights are amazing. The Red Rocks. Check it out. RV life is super cool. How's everybody doing? It's Friday where you're allowed to think. This is an open space where you can actually speak your mind. First Amendment is allowed here. Juju's here. We actually honor First Amendment speech, even yours. So, John, what's up, brother? How you feeling? It's Friday, man.
I feel great, bro. I'm excited to get a nicer early Friday. So, yeah, a lot of people have been talking about the 50A, the repeal of 50A. 50A was a law that protects police officers' personal confidential records as well as their employment records, such as any type of discipline. There was a huge push to remove that, to make officers' disciplinary records basically public open sourced info. I don't believe they did it with the intention of realizing that it would be open sourced info. I think they passed it along thinking that, well, when you file a CCRB against a cop or you're in litigation against a cop, you will have access to the cop's records. Where in years past, they, like anyone that was suing a cop or complaining about a cop didn't have access to those records. And I think we uncovered something with the help of some of our friends. So we'll get into that on why it's now open sourced and should it be open sourced. You know, so what do you think about the repeal of 50A before we get into the backstory? You know, I'll pull up, basically the law, how it passed, when it did. But what are your overall thoughts about 50A before we even go ahead and do that?
So immediately I knew right away that this would not be about transparency and about accountability. It's just another mirrored opportunity to smear police officers. It's another opportunity to deteriorate from law enforcement profession. And what it does and what it's meant to do, and I think it's been meant to do from the first place since its inception, is to create an environment where police officers are now impeded from doing intrusive police work because it holds you back from being attractable in your law enforcement career. If you're doing intrusive police work, I'm a prime example. And what it also does, it hurts you in your afterlife of law enforcement. It hurts you from getting other law enforcement opportunities because of the 50A, because it's so open, and it's so open to interpretation. It leaves out a lot of context. And what does it also do? It hurts you for other types of employment because it's open record, and it just hurts you in life. I talked about this before on the podcast. If you're just out in the dating field, and if you were going out on a date, and rhetorically speaking, let's say you're Eric Dim, you're the most complained cop. If you're going on a date, today's day, you should be typing somebody's name in. You know, some woman could type it Eric Dim and say, oh my God, this guy's a monster. That's going to be her take if she doesn't know anything about police work and it doesn't give context, right? There's going to be a case where someone accused Eric Dim of putting his finger in someone's ass while making an arrest. And without context, it's like getting a rape allegation. The stigma's there. So it hurts you in life. So that's my take on that. Just right there.
Yeah, so let's go to 50A. Let's go to Wikipedia. Let's see what Wikipedia has to say about it. It says 50A was a New York civil rights law, was a section enacted in 1976, which required the concealment of disciplinary records of police officers, firefighters, and prison officers from the public. Under the former law, any personnel records were confidential and not subject to inspection or review, unless the officer granted permission for their release. The stated rationale for the law was to protect law enforcement officers who served as witnesses for the prosecution and trials. In particular, the law was meant to protect officers from subpoenas seeking misconduct records issued by defense attorneys. Section 50A was a major source of controversy from its enactment, with civil rights activists blaming it for lack of police accountability, saying that it preserved it served to preserve institutional racism and calling it one of the strongest police secrecy laws in the country. On June 12, 2020, then Governor Andrew Cuomo signed to law to repeal that law as part of New York State Assembly Senate Bill A10611/S8496. So just on the face of the 50A, though, when I look at this, I got to be honest, I have no issue with it. I have absolutely no issue with the repeal of the 50A. I think that officers' records, while in court, while in misconduct trials, if you have a formal complaint against a cop, I believe you should have access to those records. I just don't believe that they should be open sourced. And I also believe that they need to be accurate. And what we're seeing now is they're open sourced. So anybody could go in at any time. And, we talk often about the emasculation of society, the emasculation of law enforcement, particularly the emasculation of the NYPD. And this is meant, well, I don't want to say, I have said it was meant to do that in the past, but I don't know if it was meant to do that in the past. But what it has done, it has some very negative effects that we're seeing that has led to the emasculation of police. What do you think about the bill on its face, Eric? Do you have a problem with the bill on its face?
I do, because why do we need this when you already have we already have bail reform, right? Part of bail reform is discovery and also Giglio material. What is Giglio material? That is exactly what that says in that 50A. So if you're having a court case, the defense has the right to put out a police officer's record in that court case. It's considered Giglio material. Anything that's positive or negative about that police officer's career, which includes discipline, to show a potential lack of credibility on the police officer when it comes to testimony, right? That the defense attorney has that right. So I do have a problem because to me, it comes down to who needs this information. Do we need the entire public to access Eric Dim? Should Cop Watch or any public entity have the opportunity just to walk up to a police officer while they're conducting police business and pull up their record there with no reason or no cause other than to taunt this police officer or just to probe them? So I do have a problem with it because it's who needs this information, what and why. So when it comes to Giglio material, I get it. It's a trial. A police officer is giving their testimony for that case, their expertise. So it's an opportunity to potentially show the lack of credibility, lack of expertise on that police officer, or maybe that police officer has had a failed career. But other than that, why do we need that? Why does the entire public need access to that? So I think that's where I have the issue. By the way, Sleepy Joe, shout out to you. $10.85 to the podcast. Coffee and donuts, $10.85. Our NYPD personnel, retired and active. We know exactly what that is. For outside agencies, that's code for NYPD. When you need help, $10.85. That's when the shit hits the fan. Job needs an 85 from the voters. Absolutely, you're right. We need people to come in and vote for the right people. But as John says, we also need the Republican Party to put people in that have an opportunity to actually win. If not, then we're actually having the Democrats go unopposed.
It would also be good if we had some leadership in the NYPD and also some unions. That would help a lot, instead of just two retired lieutenant bums on the podcast. So
bums.
Bums.
That's what they're saying right now. Get these bums off this podcast.
So listen, I understand what you're saying, but I think we're saying the same things. I'm saying that I have no issue with the law. I don't believe it should be open sourced. And I think you kind of said the same. You said you have an issue with the law. You said because bail reform gives Giglio. But without the repeal of this law, they wouldn't be able to have access to that record because it would shield them. So I have no issue with you being able to get that Giglio material. When it comes to a court case, you're accusing me of a crime. The government's coming after me. I should know who my accuser is. I should have the ability to discredit him if discredit is needed. I should have the ability to see that as a citizen. So I have no problem with the law. And I don't believe that the government, like Andrew Cuomo or even the activists, knew that this website, 50a.org, would appear. And we'll get into that going forward. But I think we're saying the same thing, Eric. Like, I'm saying it should definitely not be open sourced, but I have no problem with it being public record and me being as a citizen being able to request and get that information through a Freedom of Information Act, something along those lines. Like, what do you feel about that? Should it be like, if it was just if on the face, first, the records need to be accurate, and they're not, right? On this 50a.org website, the records are not accurate. And this is not a government-run site. I don't believe it is. We asked that question in the past, did some research, had some friends call in. We have a lot of info on that. But as far as if I'm accused of something by an officer and I'm now building my defense, my court case to defend myself, do you have an issue with me being able to request that information and get it?
I'm so glad you brought that up. So we are saying the same things, but we're giving a different perspective, different spin on it. So yes and no. And I'll use myself as a prime example. I think that you should actually be privy to information if a police officer is found guilty by the police department. So I think this should be a two-tiered system, right? The Civilian Complaint Review Board, if they substantiate charges, the NYPD should actually have to stamp it and say, yes, we find you guilty based on the Civilian Complaint Review Board of these charges by the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and it's substantiated by the NYPD. And then that would be public record, but only for court cases such as that. But you would have to be found guilty, not an allegation. I want to use myself as an example. When I went to an administrative trial I had in 2022, where the CCRB was asking for my termination. In this particular case, I was accused of sticking my finger in the perpetrator's ass. We had a perpetrator wanted for a robbery pattern. The perpetrator was refusing to get searched. He was fighting with my police officers in the cell. I had to run in to help them. They had every reason to believe that he had a firearm. He was not allowing them to search him. I was substantiated by CCRB, and it went to administrative trial where I fought it, and I was found not guilty. And unfortunately, when you look up the 50A, the CCRB, it does not reflect I was found not guilty. So here's a lot of context missing. But what the problem was in my administrative trial, my particular perpetrator, which was actually the civilian complaint for my CCRB, was in Rikers at the time of my administrative trial. And he was given an opportunity to testify by Zoom. He refused. He told the NYPD to go F themselves. So he refused to testify. While he was in, he slashed a correction officer in the face. He had 21 separate felonies from the time that I had my encounter with him. It took almost 4 years to get to trial. It took almost 3 years till I was actually substantiated because of the COVID extension. So every opportunity was utilized to attack my career. And in this particular case, when we testified, the fact that this particular perpetrator and civilian complainant was in Rikers, but was not found guilty yet of his crime. He was alleged that he tried to stab a Parkchester peace officer because that case was ongoing. That's why he was in Rikers. We were not allowed to bring that case up at CCRB. The fact that he slashed a correction officer and that he was not found guilty yet, it was still the allegation going to trial, that was not allowed to come up in the case. But all the allegations against myself as a police officer, even the allegations, the ones that were found exonerated or just complainant withdrawn, those were brought up in my case. So if you look at the scales, it was completely weighted against myself. So unless you're found guilty by the NYPD, I think it should not be exposed to the public.
Oh, I 100%. I 100% agree with that. I mean, I think that's where this law fails immediately, right? They never put those guidelines in there. Why the allegations? Because now it's an allegations, it's a smear, right? So we've weaponized the smear. So I agree with you. What I'm saying is those records aren't competent and those records aren't up to date. You want to see my discipline? You could see the discipline that I was found guilty for, right? You could see the discipline what I was found guilty for, or you could see what you're accusing me of. You can't see what other people accused me of in the past that I was found not guilty or exonerated, whatever whatever case closing we got at the end. So I agree with you. I think that's where this fails. This fails that this is open source data. The other way it fails is I'm no longer a member of the New York City Police Department. Should I have access to your disciplinary records as a retired member of service, a vested, you work for a different agency? Should police officers' records be open sourced for eternity?
No, absolutely not. And I actually weaponized it myself. When we started to receive attacks from the khaki pants unit, I didn't care. I was tolerable of it. You were tolerable. We were laughing at it. But when we started to receive death threats from the fake moniker, All Cops Are Welcome, I started to do my own investigation on who it could be. It was very simple to try to drill down. All right, we have a possibility of about 5 different people of who it could be, but it's very easy. I accessed the CCRB database, and if you go to the CCRB database, if anyone has an opportunity, you could actually go to the CCRB database, and you can find by every command, by name, by unit, by borough. You could break it down anyway, and every person is listed in that database. Just go. It's public record. Just go in the CCRB database. And I was able, without foiling anything, without contacting the NYPD, I could get so much vital information about who's in what precinct, who works with who. And even if they didn't receive civilian complaints, if they have 0, they're still in that CCRB database. So if you have an opportunity, just type in MOS CCRB database, and it's scary, the amount of information that you could pull up. Including tax numbers and things like that. So very scary. This is stuff that it's way too transparent and easily accessible to the public and not necessary. And it creates harm to the police officers. And we could actually put our police officers in an extreme amount of danger, which they already are. And they may not know it because it's 50A. But if you remember, when the information was leaked to the public from this 50A at the time, the unions had advised that this information would not go out in this manner that it is right now. And then, boom, it popped up, right? All the CCRBs popped up. This 50a.org website popped up, and the unions have been complete toothless lions, and they haven't done anything about it. We were told that it would not emerge in this manner. It was supposed to be utilizing exactly what you said, John. Giglio material. It would be accessed when a CCRB case actually comes up, but it was not supposed to be this transparent or this open to the public. I think this went far to the other side. This is absolutely ridiculous. Because you imagine you just walked up to a potential perpetrator in the street and go, boop, oh, look, I got all your information. I got every complaint you've ever got on a past job. I got all your prior arrests. I have every summons you've ever received. I have stuff that you just received, allegations. I have all your sealed records right now. I know when you applied for a job. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, so your information's out. It's public information. Somebody has weaponized this open sourced information and has taken this open source information, created a Twitter handle that's now defunct. I don't know. I searched it the other day. It's not there any longer. They probably watching this podcast right now because everybody that comes on here, their photos get updated with the podcast photos. So particularly Moreland Bethel. So if you're on here right now, I mean, transparency goes both ways. So we're going to explore that in a little while. So what we're saying is, I think what we're saying is, and disagree with me if I'm painting this wrong, but we're saying that the law in itself isn't terrible. Transparency matters, but accusations are slander. Accusations you're found not guilty of should not be open source public information. Once you're retired, these administrative allegations should go away from you, right? They should. It's it. They're administrative. They're not criminal in any nature. And now we just seen the Clean Slate Act pass, right? We just saw the Clean Slate Act pass, where people could be accused of crimes such as robbery and violent assaults, and have their records completely expunged after a certain amount of time if they committed no infractions. What we're talking about with the 50A is exposing officers who were accused of administrative, administrative wrongdoings. They're not even crimes. They're violations of the NYPD patrol guide or NYPD policy. So we have that open source currently for eternity. And we're saying that's wrong and that should be removed. And the inaccuracies or the allegations that never came to fruition that people weren't found guilty of shouldn't be removed. But now, what about allegations you are found guilty of? Do police officers not get the same level of respect as violent felons?
Huge problem right there. Huge problem. This is something I've been advocating for years, right? If you receive allegations from the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and if you're actually exonerated for those allegations. So if anyone's unsure what exonerated means, it means that the actions that you were accused of, those actions did take place, but those actions are justified and within department guidelines, and you acted appropriately. If you're exonerated, those allegations should not be on your record at all. At all. All right? It's pretty much you're found not guilty. Now, if you actually are found guilty by the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and that case is substantiated, whether it's at the discipline on the command level, or if you actually receive formal department charges. Now, these department charges, people have to understand, are not necessarily coming from the NYPD. The Civilian Complaint Review Board has the power to substantiate charges and issue charges, administrative charges, on behalf of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And then when you fight that, the Civilian Complaint Review Board brings their own attorneys in these cases. If you win, which I did in several cases, those cases should not be reflective on your 50A. You're found not guilty. Why are those allegations still there? The fact that it's missing context and doesn't indicate that you're found not guilty, a lot of these things are missing, is a huge problem. But the fact that you're found not guilty, it should not be there at all. This is a huge problem. I mean, forget about police work. Let's just talk about in life. Let's say, for instance, you're a police officer and you're going through a custody trial. Let's say you have a custody case with your wife, or you're a woman and you're going through a custody case with your ex-husband. That 50A will be utilized against you. Absolutely. That 50A is open to public view, and the attorneys are going to use that to paint you as some type of monster or anything. What if you're trying to get a job? That's going to hold you back from getting that job. And this is all administrative. And what if it's 10 years after your employment? Why is this open to public? Why does someone have the access to this and they don't even need a subpoena for it? This is absolutely insane. VSS Ventura's, shout out to you, brother. Thank you so much. Always giving coffee and donuts to the podcast. $5. 50A is just an excuse to target police officers. Boom. You're absolutely right. That's exactly what it is. I got to read that again. 50A is just an excuse to target police officers. That's what it is. That 50A, you might as well put 50A on the back of your uniform, is a target on your back. Much like CCRB's powers are used as a bludgeon to target the police. Real transparency isn't weaponized. Bam. I love it. That's outstanding.
So I get what you're saying, and I agree with you 100%. It should be completely expunged from your record, right? It shouldn't be open sourced. Anyone that is open sourcing that info, if it's a private citizen, should immediately redact that. They should have the proper information. CCRB and the NYPD units should be reaching out to that individual and telling them to fix the record, sending them cease and desist, or they'll be sued for slander. But I'm also saying you got a cop with a year on. He does something stupid. He's found guilty of it. Pleads guilty to it. He continues on with his career. Should that complaint carry him his entire career? Should it be open source public information when we're letting felons, violent felons, people who committed assault, people who committed robbery, we're expunging their record after X amount of years, when now new guys have to do 25 years. I believe it's 7 years on the Clean Slate Act, and you haven't gotten in trouble, automatically your record is sealed. Why is that not the same for NYPD officers? So a kid with a year on gets in trouble, does something stupid, he's guilty of it, right? Should at some point his records be automatically sealed and excluded from public record?
Well, you provide the answer right there. Should someone who has taken the life of someone else by accident in 2008 become the chief of patrol almost 20 years later? Is it possible they're a different person? Is it possible they made a mistake, a deadly mistake? It's possible they learned from it and could rise to the chief of patrol. Do you think something like that could happen? I mean, it's possible that someone at 21 years old, as a young cop, And according to Juju, the mind is not fully developed until 25 years old. It's possible that person does not have the same capabilities, and 20 years later becomes a fantastic cop and learns from their failed mistakes, right? Your failed mistakes are steps to success as you learn from it. Absolutely. First of all, if you get involved in a car accident, that's on your insurance for 3 years. But after 3 years, it comes off. Why? Because people learn from things. The same thing should apply. I've been saying that for years. A CCRB should be on your record for 3 to 5 years. I would say 3 years makes sense. After 3 years, I don't care what the case is. If you were found guilty, substantiated, that should come off your record. If it's so egregious, think about this, John. If it's so egregious to the point that we have to leave it on your record forever, you shouldn't even be in law enforcement anyway. You should be terminated. But if it's something that you made a mistake and you learned from it, you paid your debt to society just as a clean slate, and you were issued discipline, and you lost vacation days or you lost money, somehow you paid with discipline, why is that on your record forever? That should be off your record. If you can become the chief of patrol after taking someone's life, well, then you know what? A CCRB should not be on your record forever.
And now, so let's switch. Now, this is administrative, right? And this is administrative, and it's obviously much less standard of when you commit a crime, right? So let's say if you are an officer and you commit a crime, right? You commit a crime. But now we have clean slate in effect. We have clean slate, the clean slate bill. And everyone else that committed a crime in the same time frame that you committed that crime, everybody else, right? Committed the same crime. Everyone else, everyone that committed a crime who was not a police officer, record will be automatically expunged after X amount of time. But you're a police officer, you commit a crime, you're guilty of it, you go on with your career, your record never gets expunged. Your record stays for eternity on this 50A website, open source data that anybody else could create another 50A website. So this appears to be a public website that the unions, the city of New York, the NYPD has done absolutely nothing to protect officers on. Before we go any further, we got to give a shout out to Arbed, great friend to the podcast, donated $49.99 to the podcast. No coffee, no donuts, time for real gamesmanship. The domain .org TDL is registered to Najla Akhta LLC, Charlestown. I don't know what KN is. That you, Juju? Kaz, time for investigative skills to be exercised by non-corrupt law enforcement agency. So thank you for that. That's what Arbad's saying. He's saying that's where the domain is registered to. You could register. I own many domains. You could register domains a lot of different places. So that doesn't tell much of a tale. We're going to go a little further on that, Arbad, and we appreciate you. And we could use your help. So if you could listen carefully as we go through this, we'd appreciate it. But we just want to lay out for the public and for the media and for the politicians so that they could understand what we're saying. We're saying that police officers are not being held to the same standards as people who committed crimes. And on this podcast, we support second chances. We support people who've committed crimes getting second chances, going to jail. We've had numerous people on here who have been in jail, spent time in jail, and completely changed their lives. So we completely, utterly support people being able to move on with their lives and even having their records expunged after a certain amount of time. But what we're saying is those are crimes. These are administrative charges, and people, it's open sourced forever. It's open source for any anti-police activist or anyone who feels that this should be public record. But the problem is they're giving out inaccurate records. So when I post something saying that Eric Dim stuck his finger up somebody's anus, I slandered him because it's false. He was proven not guilty of it. I defamed him. Why are we not standing up for our officers?
Fantastic. Rhetorically speaking, let's take two separate cases. Let's say we have one police officer that's involved in a case, and that police officer makes an arrest. And we know what happens now. Police officer is involved in an arrest situation, and that police officer is charged with assault. The police officer is found guilty, convicted. Now we have another police officer Same thing. Police officer involved in a case, right? An alleged accused of assault. That police officer is found not guilty in a criminal court. That police officer gets a CCRB. So we have one police officer found not guilty of an assault, but gets a substantiated complaint by CCRB. That's going to be on his 50A. The other police officer is found guilty, but does not receive a CCRB. That police officer is found guilty, serves time in jail. After a certain amount of time, because of the clean slate, that police officer's record is going to be expunged and have no record. It's going to be clean. The other police officer who's found not guilty of assault but received a substantiated complaint, that will be on his 50A forever, as we know. Because we know right now we have toothless unions. We have an NYPD leadership that's not standing up for the police officers. How could Pat Hendry stand there at a dais while we have a police officer shot and scream and yell at the justice system, which he's right about that, but not look over at the dais, the NYPD leadership that has not supported the police officers? Not just this administration, the prior administration also when it comes to 50A. Because I know right away people to say, oh, you only attack this administration. No, prior administration also. But this administration is in the position of power right now, and that's who we're speaking to. And they have the opportunity. If they say they care and love police officers, then put your finger on this. But think about that, John. You have two police officers. One is found guilty, serves time in jail, can have a clean slate. The other is not guilty, just an allegation, gets a substantiated complaint, and that is on his record forever, or her record.
Well, but here's the thing. I agree with you, but here's the thing. I'm going to give you a different scenario because the cop's arrest is going to be expunged criminally, but it'll still be active. It'll still be active on their 50A forever. It'll still be open source information. So, like, take two friends in a car. One's a police officer, one's not. They both get arrested. The officers charged formally by the department, administratively by the department. They both get found guilty. The officer continues on with his career. His 50A will always show that arrest and that stuff. His friend who was in the car, criminal records expunged. It's gone. It's completely gone. So shout out to Derek Gibson for New York, running for New York governor. The original Unfiltered. Check out Derek on X. Great guy, standing up, great patriot, standing up for what's right. So shout out to you. So this is how so this website, based upon this law, this website 50A, this whatever you want to call it, this handle on X that's now down. The website's still active. I'll pull the website up in a little bit. But based on this law, what we've seen is cops basically being harassed with their complaint records, with their records. So I'm going to play this video right now. This is a female officer, not bothering anybody, doing her job, standing there, and she's approached. This is by Cop Watch Patrol Unit. And this is this is how the 50A and this 50a.org website has been used. Right? This is how it's being used currently. And this is where we bring in the word emasculation, not because she's a female officer, but because this is what they're doing to both male and female officers out there on New York City streets. They're using this to target and harass officers. Now, tell me that this officer who's standing on her footpost, trying to provide public safety, trying to answer 911 calls, is able to actually do that. And again, we have an inept, weak leadership and union who has not called, who has not spoke to the mayor about this, who has not called this to be utilized in enforcement action. Any action like this is obstructing governmental administration. This is what's known as a law that was put on the books about 10 years back called harassment of a police officer. So it violates numerous laws. This should be an arrestable offense here. You cannot sit there and target and harass an individual, right, in an officer's presence. And you shouldn't be able to sit there and target an officer. You should be able to do whatever you want from 10 feet away, 5 feet away, say whatever you want. But this is how this 50A has been weaponized. So here we go. Check out this video.
Oh, look, I'm sorry, but it says guilty while on duty, wrongfully operated motor vehicle. She left, wrongfully refused to take the breathalyzer test, and she left the scene.
And you left the scene. You didn't want to take the breathalyzer. That's sad. You can't do that. You're breaking the law. How are you still a cop, though?
She went to take it to a rehab.
No, but still, I know. But does she have any lawsuits? Yeah, 123,000 she made last year. Yeah.
She got disciplined.
When did she started?
2006.
Okay.
January 2020.
We can't drive in at parties, you know. You gotta have like a guy to drive you around, you know.
We started in 2021. We made 58,700.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Oh my! But he wants to make fun of us. But meanwhile, that's all he made.
Oh, look, I'm sorry, but
Yeah, that's the 50A. That's how it's being utilized.
Every time I watch this video, it's brutal to watch because this is such a precarious position for a police officer to be in, right? You're supposed to have thick skin as a police officer, and yet, under the leadership of the mayor, who doesn't have thick skin himself, we expect our police officers to be the most exemplary people, right? Eric Adams could not take any rhetoric. Eric Adams could not take any, any criticism from an old lady, 80, what was that lady, 80 some odd years old, a Holocaust survivor. He couldn't take any criticism from an 80 some odd year old lady. And yet we expect our police officers to take that's just complete verbal abuse. The fact that they're doing puts them in such a precarious position because that's their post. They're in a position where they can't leave, right? Because we could say, hey, listen, words don't matter. Just walk away, right? These police officers can't leave. That's their post. They're assigned to that spot. This puts them in a terrible position, right? So now if they push back on this at all, it puts them in a position if they end up getting into some type of confrontation, they'll get, again, attacked by the Civilian Complaint Review Board. This is terrible. This is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that they have, first of all, let's forget about the Civilian Complaint Review Board and the salary that's open to the public, right, through See-Through New York. But the fact that the city does not fight these lawsuits, and it's the police officer that pays that burden. Because if you look at my record, right, it looks like I gave out $2 million to somebody. But the city had these allegations and never actually fought for them. They just pay. And that's the problem. And they look at, oh, listen, Eric Dim, you're responsible for $2 million. Other active police officers, you're responsible for all these millions. But yet, the city does not fight these cases. And yet, who takes the burden? It's the police officers themselves. Charlie Mack reviews precious metals. That's a long name. Thanks, brother. $9.99 to the podcast. Yup, coffee and donuts. It says protein shakes for the crew. How the heck do people have access to cop files that fast? Scary with a few more deep dives. Could find more personal details or where they live. Huge breach security. Absolutely spot on, brother. Thank you so much for the donation to the podcast. We talk about that all the time. Exactly what you said. Huge breach security. Because it's our belief, John and I both feel that this is a path to corruption. Why? Because it's easy for an entity like CopWatch, and I'm not saying CopWatch is doing that, but any other entity, if they decide that they want to target police officers, let's say Trende Aragua says, you know what? It's a $10 to $15 million cartel that has a lot of money. This gang has a lot of money that spans through different countries. You know what? We're going to have police officers to start work for us. You know what? You have all their access to their public record. You find out where they live. And you say, hey, to this police officer, don't you have your kids going home today from PS50 or whatever the case is? Well, that's a scary thing. So that police officer may succumb to corruption. They may actually succumb to this gang, telling them what to do because they have to worry about their family. This is definitely a path to corruption.
All right, so we kind of laid out what 50A is. Let's go to the history of it, and then we'll focus on the website. So for those of you that are watching on YouTube currently or will in the future, this is coming in by way of Ebro in the morning, Hot 97. This is a morning interview on the morning of June 4th, 2020, where then Police Commissioner Dermot Shay calls in. It's a rather long interview, but when we talk about the emasculation of the NYPD, we should also talk about the emasculation of the Office of the Police Commissioner. So this was the height prior to this bill being signed on June 12th, 2020. So I think, Eric, you're pretty familiar with June 4th, 2020 and what was going on. It was the height of the George Floyd riots, and people were calling for open transparency. This is an 18-minute interview with then Police Commissioner Dermot Shay. I don't know if I will be told to remove this from YouTube later on, so I may, if I'm told, if they pull this down. So if you're on YouTube watching this later on, you're not live. The next part of the show we're about to play, if it's not there and we just skip ahead, go over to our Rumble, go over our social media.
We got the commissioner on the line who's very busy right now. His name is Dermot Shay. How you doing, Commissioner?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time today. We got to run through a few questions with you before we get into the depth of this interview and really come to some terms. I'm very frustrated. First things first, do you believe there are white supremacists acting inside the NYPD?
I have no evidence of that, Ebro. None at all. I mean, we would do anything that we could possibly, if that was the case, to root that out in a half a second. It's the last thing we would ever want to happen.
Do you believe that that's ever been a part of the NYPD fabric?
I would have zero tolerance for that.
Do you believe that that's ever been a part of the NYPD fabric?
What's that?
Racism, white supremacy, and any KKK Nazi affiliations in the NYPD?
I think there's racism in every part of society.
That's not a good enough answer for me, man.
That would include the NYPD. There is no doubt. It is a part of human nature. I think we all know that, unfortunately.
Before we even go further, what do you think about it?
Listen, I know right away people say we're so critical of this particular leadership, but we're critical of leadership prior. Dermot Shay paved the path where he started giving the store away, which is also the inception of the disciplinary matrix. I find an extreme amount of fault with Dermot Shay. This leadership is far more egregious, but with Dermot Shay definitely laid down. Absolutely ridiculous. No backbone here. He should say right now, there's absolutely no racism in the police department. And if there is, and we find it, we'll weed it out. There's no cases of white supremacy at all in the NYPD. I spent almost 20 years in the police department. I never seen any white supremacy. John, you never saw any white supremacy. That's absolutely ridiculous. He should put his finger on it, stand up and say, that's absolutely ridiculous that you're even saying that and making those accusations. We do not have a racist police department. Is there prejudice? You want to talk, is there prejudice, potential prejudice? Yes, there's prejudice everywhere. But racism, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I've met some people who I don't even want to say they're black supremacists, but I've met a lot of black people who are very biased towards whites and have all of these things about how privileged my life and my childhood was. But I didn't hold them completely strictly accountable and say, oh, they're black supremacists running all over the police department. I just said what I think about anybody. What I think about a backwoods hillbilly who doesn't like anybody. I think you're just ignorant. You're not truly racist at the heart of it. But Dermot Shay, weak, complete, disgusting, utter answer. You're 100% right, Eric. Police commissioner, what would you say? There's no white supremacy. Do you have any evidence of white supremacy, Ebro? But no. Instead, he comes on completely apologetic, completely pandering, and in the first minute, I'm already disgusted, and I can't believe we have 17 more minutes to get through. Here we go. So,
so the answer would be yes.
Okay. 7 black police officers have come to you regarding the removal of Craig Elderman and Vincent DeAndrea. They feel ignored. What's going on there?
Yeah, we in the last 2 weeks, I've gotten a number of complaints. I'll tell you, this is the incident on video where a female protester was pushed to the ground. There's been about 6 to 10 incidents throughout the last 2 weeks of this craziness that we're all living through. That's one of them. This is what I will say to you. No one is being ignored. We can at times I've had many conversations with elected officials and community leaders about several incidents, including that one. They will be thoroughly investigated promptly, and the appropriate measures will be taken. And if they are not, then that's on me, and that's who you come to. But you do have to have, I understand I'm asking for faith and process here and time, and everyone is short on all three. But I stand behind my reputation of doing what's right.
Do you support the repeal of Statute 50A?
I think that we're on record, including me, that there has to be changes. The repeal word that you just said is what concerns me, because the biggest concern in it is it would open up wide, potentially, police officers, their families to attacks.
So you want it changed so that we can't see their personal information.
I want to have that conversation, and I'm fully behind making significant changes, but we have to preserve the safety of the officers that are out there on the street as well, and their families.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
So now that you've acknowledged that since white supremacy and racism is a part of society, it is likely inside the NYPD also, what process can us as civilians expect from you all to move swiftly to identify not only white supremacists and racists, but any abusive cop? Because right now, the internal investigation process is taking too long. And I personally feel and fear that what we're seeing in the streets is the fact that time and time again, there's been an internal review. We're doing an investigation. We are taking this seriously, yada, yada, yada. Nobody has time for it. And these young people out here, as you see on the front lines, are not afraid. And I don't know how to put this back in the bag without the police coming to terms that there are problems that you guys have exacerbated. I don't know how.
Yeah, and I think I agree with, if not 100%, I agree with 99.9% of what you just said, for the record. And I've said publicly that there is much that we have to do better. I think some of what we've been trying to do over the last couple of years isn't mentioned in that statement, but I'm not really worried about that. We have to do better as a police department in terms of communicating with communities all over this city, how we investigate, why we do what we do, what the status of the investigations are, and we got to do what's right. I think that we are moving towards that 100%, but what you just said is right. I'll give you the example, Ebro, of the Lower East Side incident a couple of weeks ago. That incident happened, if you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, where the cops slapped.
All right, before we go further, what do you think about this so far?
Honestly, I'm like, it pains me to even listen to this. I remember this interview. Shay just sounds so weak right now, taking part in this interview. First of all, who thought it was a good idea to do this interview? I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Patrick Donahue says it great. How was this interview selected for the PC to participate in? Whoever in DCPI greenlit this should be fired. Absolutely ridiculous. First of all, John Shell goes out there on a media tour right now and is timid to come on our podcast. We would treat him with respect and give an opportunity to have real conversations. This here is completely abusive. And the fact that he completely interjected and said and boxed and I can't believe that Ebro outsmarted Dermot Shay. He says, okay, so now that you agree that there's white supremacists in the NYPD, and Dermot Shay completely missed it and didn't fire back at that, and just continued with the conversation, shows he was weak and just wanted to get through this interview. The fact that he did this interview is absolutely ridiculous. This is a complete hit job, but he did not stand up against it. I think it was completely weak. But what did he do? He revealed exactly what we've been saying, John. They knew from 2020, and they know now, that this is going to seep into the police department and create exactly what one of our friends and listeners said here, a breach of security and potential corruption, because police officers are in harm's way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing, he doesn't stand up for Officer DeAndrea. During the riots, if those that aren't familiar with it, the officer, I believe that, I don't know that she spit in his face, but I believe that this woman charged Officer DeAndrea and spit in his face, or was about to, and he shoved her. She fell backwards. It was in the middle of complete chaos. They say that she hit her head. Or DeAndrea and I think the captain, whatever his name was, they kept walking instead of going to assist her. And I think, you know, if you want to look at, did they do anything wrong? I guess, yeah, you could say that they should have went and rendered aid to make sure she was okay at that point. But there was a lot of chaos that night. And, you know, ultimately, I think Officer DeAndrea was even charged in it. And then that charge was dismissed. And because I don't believe that he did anything wrong, I believe he was defending himself. you know, and I don't think that he even stood up for the cops at all at that point. He didn't stand up for them at all. He brushed right over it like they did do something wrong. And I think that was weak right off the bat. And then he just continues to pander to Ebro. Yeah. And I was thinking the same thing. I was like, wow, I would never talk to I don't like Kaz and I don't like Shell and I don't like Adams. I would never talk to them like that. I would never talk to anybody that came on this podcast the way that Ebro is talking to the police commissioner. Police commissioner there is completely in an emasculated situation, actually almost begging Ebro. Ebro's almost threatening him. You heard what he said to him. I don't know if I could put this in the bag. These youth aren't scared. He's threatening the police commissioner in the New York City Police Department. And there's not a stance of power there. You're the most powerful person in New York City, probably more powerful than the mayor. I know that we haven't seen that because people have been in the office of police commissioner recently. You haven't seen them exude any power or any confidence. But you are. If you're the New York City, if you're the NYPD police commissioner, at the moment you are holding that reign, you're more powerful. You're the most powerful person in New York City. And I don't think Dermot Shea exuded that at all. Ebro was the most powerful person in New York City that day. So let's go further.
The kid and the white woman was trying to protect the guy from being arrested. Yes.
And there was a fight on the corner, and then he's kneeling at.
At Acellus Academy, students study online using Acellus Gold.
I didn't like what I saw. I took his guns away that very night. We announced it at press conferences what we were doing. Within a couple weeks, I could be off a week or two. I could. But within a couple weeks, we had concluded our internal investigation. And then I got up and issued a press release, which a lot of people didn't like because we don't normally do that. These are not normal times. We need to look in the mirror as well. I mean, there's a lot of blame all around here, I believe, and it's not just on the police department. And there's a lack of leadership on many levels. But in this particular case, and this is my intention of, again, we have to do what you just said, change, increase transparency. I issued a press release saying the investigation is done. We never do that before, but I want to tell people. And it's done, and it's being turned over to our internal department advocate to proceed with discipline. And that's going to be done as quickly as possible. And then everything that you're talking about comes back to one person. It comes back to me.
Now, can we expect weekly updates from you, or at least daily updates from you on all of these investigations? Because this can't drag out through the summer.
100% agree with you. I don't know whether it's daily or weekly, but we will be as an agency. We've already started, whether it's myself, Ben Tucker, other leaders in this department, we know what needs to be done. We're moving towards it. And let me say this, I may come out with those updates and you may not like them. And that's not going to sway me either. My job is to do what I think is right. If I'm not doing something right, then quite frankly, I've said this before, I should be fired. But I'm going to do what's right, but I'm going to tell you, and there should be a dialogue and a discussion. And nobody always agrees on everything. There are personal biases on every side, but absolutely, I have no issue with what you said before, and I believe everything you said.
This conversation is going longer than I anticipated. I was going to disconnect you if you didn't answer things that I thought appropriately, but you're doing a good job, and I appreciate it.
That. Well, listen, we've spoken before, and I stand behind my reputation. I defend my cops. I also call out my cops when they're doing something wrong. And all you have is, I am not a politician that's, saying what's right where the wind blows. I'm going to do what I think is right, period.
We got a call from an officer this morning, Commissioner Shay, who said to us that they're afraid for their safety and their family's safety if they participate in calling out bad cops. I'm permanently taking the stance because I feel like we've lost ground and we have to be more aggressive with our stance with police and our expectations of police, because we've lost ground. I believe there's been improvements in the NYPD over the last.
All right, I don't think we need any more of that. So you see the height of where we're at. as the 50A is about to get passed. Again, this was on June 4th, 2020, height of the riots. Well, I believe that was the same date that you were dealing with a riot in the Mott Haven section of the Bronx. Am I correct, Eric?
Absolutely. That's another reason why it is an indication that Shay was bending a knee, right? Figuratively speaking, because Monahan actually bent a knee, but he was bending a knee to the public. And this was a vicious day. We had a lot of credible information. The reason why the interview was done on that day, because it was information that came out the entire week, that June 4th was pretty much D-Day for New York City. And there were threats to different parts of the city. We had an all-out riot in the Bronx where the police officers paid the liability and the price, including myself, with a picture in the paper. I lost numerous vacation days while it was just complete savagery. I watched people in the crowd try to pick up a wheelbarrow to throw at the cops. We had two separate cars that were apprehended. One had Molotov cocktails. One had illegal firearms. There was a nexus with that to the riot on June 4th. These people out there had goggles on. They were all types of stuff that had smells. It was just complete insanity. Shay should have been there saying, this is absolutely ridiculous because my police officer out there right now trying to keep the city together, fighting right now for you. That was completely disrespectful. That was so obtuse. That's the difference between this podcast. If we had Juju, John Shell, or anybody on this podcast, we would have an actual conversation. Opposition meets opportunity, a respectful conversation. That was ridiculous. That was and that on June 4th was an all absolutely.
Yeah, it was absolutely. So he goes on Ebro in the morning, sounds like a completely emasculated man, sounds like he's begging for forgiveness for us doing our job. For us doing our job. Oh, things need to change. What needs to change? What needed to change? It needed to change that we needed to make New York City unsafe? What needed to be changed? What specifically was the NYPD doing that was inaccurate, Dermot? I'd love to know. We're reviewing it in hindsight. Hindsight's 2020. So now in hindsight, you should have time to reflect on this interview. We'd love to know what that was. We'd love to know what it was, because I don't know what it was. I know that we were keeping New Yorkers safe. I know that we had a safer version of New York City. I know that we were completely emasculated in 2020 under your leadership. I know that we had an inept, incompetent response to what happened post George Floyd. And then the knee-jerk reactions come in. Cuomo celebrates this. He bans chokeholds. He signs into law 50A. So immediately after going on this interview, Eric had to deal with a riot where people were tossing wheelbarrows at him, showing up to riots with Molotov cocktails. I believe there were other incidents throughout the city on that exact day. Numerous cops were sued. A lot of the people who were doing such won money later on in the years down the road. A lot of cops, 50A has been mangled because of the allegations that were made during these times. So what happened? So here comes Andrew Cuomo, right? Wants to throw his name in the hat, was hoping for a special election. Didn't get one. Eric Adams is hanging in. So here's June 12th. Governor Cuomo signing in the law. And I want you to pay particular attention to the end of this video, because guess who's going to be on it again? Dermot Shay.
Sign the bill.
Earlier this month, with the mother of Eric Garner at his side, Governor Cuomo repealed Section 50A.
Congratulations, the bills are signed.
Yeah. Which shielded disciplinary records of police officers from the public.
The 50A was a significant one. I think you got to own your bad mistakes and you got to move forward, and it creates a tremendous opportunity, I think, to build trust.
Sign.
Tremendous opportunity, Eric. It creates a tremendous opportunity. There was a lot of trust going on for that female officer, don't you think? A lot of trust.
That's funny because he completely contradicted his own statement when he spoke to Ebro, where he alluded to the fact of what we've been saying, that this is going to create an environment that is harmful and dangerous to police officers and their families. And now here he's saying that this is a great opportunity. Someone put it here. AJ, my brother, you're outstanding. You are right. Shay, you're a cuck. Absolutely. This is absolutely ridiculous. Shay paved the way for the administration that we have right now. The failed leadership that we see right now, Shay started it. They saw the opportunity. When you go out there and you pander to the public, he claims he's not a politician. Complete lie. He became a politician that pandered to the movement, saw it self-serving. And what I say, John, the reason why these guys move in this manner is because they paved the way for their offspring. And what do we see? Within 18 months, Shay's son was in the squad to become a detective. So that's what this is all about. Pave the way for yourself and pave the way for your offspring. Arbed, shout out to you, brother. Great brother to the podcast. Another $9.99 to the podcast. Now we're getting coffee and donuts. Does NYPD membership of service have any whites only or white benevolent organizations? Didn't Adams, the cop, run a racially non-diverse group during his New York City Cops Are Racist Media 4 years? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, Adams absolutely founded 100 blacks in law enforcement. Adams was a complete rebel rouser. The fact that we have an accusation that there's actual white supremacy in the NYPD is ridiculous. Absolutely. I saw prejudice on both parts. I see prejudice all the time in people in life, but I did not see racism. I tell you straight out, I did not see racism. I worked with the finest men and women that treated people fairly and treated people with the most compassionate care than anyone else. People go into neighborhoods that they've never been in their entire lives. John, I'm a New York City kid. You're a New York City kid. And I worked with some people that worked way upstate. They've never spent any time in New York City until they became a New York City cop. They put themselves out there and went to neighborhoods they never even knew to try to help people.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. So we see that, 50A comes in, they sign this into law, and then who was a big supporter of this bill? Before we even get into that, let's see who was a supporter of the bill. This was Cuomo saying, I just signed into law, nation-leading legislation, ends the 50A, bans chokeholds, prohibits false race-based 911 calls, makes Attorney General the independent prosecutor in the killings of unarmed civilians by police. There is more to do, and New York is leading the way. That is on, Governor Cuomo tweeted that, then Governor Cuomo tweeted that on June 12th, 2020, with a photo of him standing with Eric Garner's mother and Al Sharpton. But who also supported that? The support of people who are now running for mayor are supporting that. Here is, let me bring this up to the screen. Okay, it's on the screen. Here is Senator Zelnor Myrie running for New York City mayor. Sponsored this bill. You know who else sponsored this bill? Mayoral candidate Jessica Ramos sponsored this bill. So we have two candidates for mayor who have yet to utter a word about the appointment of the fourth NYPD police commissioner and it being Jessica Tisch. They have zero opinion on it, but they have a very strong opinion about this. Let's see what Senator Zelnor Myrie, now mayoral candidate Myrie, had to say.
So 11 days ago, when I put on a neon green t-shirt with my name and title on the back, I walked to Barclays Center, not just as a state senator, but as a black man who has grown up in this country and has seen brutality have no consequence for my people. And what I was met with was not open arms. Instead, I was pushed, I was shoved, I was hit in the back, pepper sprayed, and handcuffed. So you're right. This is the moment. We are tired. There has been no consequence for the brutality against our people. And to this day, I don't know if the officer that sprayed me and my colleague in the assembly has a history of excessive use of force. That is what this bill is about. It is about the history. We have seen brutality go unanswered. This isn't an attack. This is accountability. This isn't targeting. This is transparency. This isn't anti-police. This is pro-people.
It's pro-people, Eric.
Yeah, pro-people. How about the fact that why don't he be transparent and tell people what he actually means? So, do we all know what he means when he says he was wearing a green shirt? He's wearing a green shirt because he's at the riot. He wasn't walking down the street when he was pushed and shoved. What he failed to mention was he was wearing a green shirt because he was one of the legal observers. The green shirts and the green hats were the legal observers who partook at the riot, and they took notes. And they were taking notes of police officers that they wanted to make civilian complaints against. That's what he was doing. So if he was pushed and shoved, probably because he took part in that riot, not a protest. So this is stuff that he failed to mention. What does he keep saying? Our people, our people. That sounds kind of racist and divisive to me. This doesn't sound like someone that brings people together. So how about you hold yourself accountable, Senator?
Yeah, what he's saying by that when he's saying our people is he's making the assertion that the NYPD is an openly racist organization that is attacking black people and assaulting them and brutalizing them and not being held accountable. And that couldn't be the furthest from the truth. I recommend you guys go back, you watch that Hot 97 interview. I'll post a link to it. And it goes on for like another 7 minutes, and you just hear the complete pandering of Dermot Shay. It's absolutely disgusting, and you hear the whole stance of people at that time allowing this rhetoric to happen. You know, I remember that time specifically. I remember dealing with people on duty and off duty. I remember dealing with friends of family talking about how racist we are, how police brutality is bad. They fanned the flames, they spread misinformation, and it was allowed, and there was no pushback. There was zero pushback. I mean, during this time, there were people I still don't talk to. There were people I still don't talk to because I was like, you are not going to sit here and call me a racist. You are not going to sit there and tell me that I'm running around and I'm acting as a slave patrol or something of that nature. It's not happening. You're not doing it to me. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're my wife's best friend, husband. I don't care who the hell you are. You're not making that assertion to me. I don't care if you're a congressman, Max Rose. I don't care who you are. If you're in my face and you pull that nonsense, not happening. I'm shutting it down. But yet our leadership didn't shut it down. Our leadership allowed it. Our unions allowed it. They didn't say a word about it. Not one word about it. And here we are today. That bill passes. Here's the Senate bill. Let's go through it real quick. Sponsored by Jamal Bailey, familiar name, right? Because he keeps getting reelected in New York, right? Relates to the disclosure of law enforcement and disciplinary records. Let's download the text in the bill. And basically what it does is it repeals the 50A and opens up all of your stuff to the public, right? And who was the sponsors? The co-sponsors? Louis Sepulveda, Alessandra Biaggi. Her father was an NYPD lieutenant, turned, I believe he was a state senator after that as well. Democrat Brian Benjamin, Neil Breslin. Additional co-sponsors, David Carlucci, Mike Ginaris, still there, Robert Jackson, Liz Kruger, Rachel May, Zelna Myrie, who we said, mayoral candidate, Kevin Parker, Velmont Montgomery, John Liu, still there, Brian Kavanaugh, Brad Holloman Sigel, Leroy Cormy, Jose Serrano, Diane J. Savino, Julia Salazar, still there, Jessica Ramos, mayor for New York City candidate, Toby Ann Stavisky. So these people all put this bill into place under the guise that this is going to make New York City safer. And I don't know, since the inception of this bill, Eric, how's crime faring?
Shay, again, I tell you, Shay gave away the store and created the pathway about leadership being self-serving and creating the pathway for offspring. That's what this was about. Shay never once stood up and said, hey, yeah, I see the breach of security right now. I see how Cop Watch and other organizations taunt police officers out there, exposing how the 50A could be used against the police officer to create corruption because it create a harmful environment to the police officer, potentially their families, and put them in some severe danger. But he doesn't say that. Why? Because he paid paved the way for his offspring. His son went to the detective squad with 18 months on the job. Think about that. 6 months in the police academy, 1 year police experience. He went to the detective squad. While I had some of the best men and women the NYPD has to offer with 10 to 15 years on the job doing plainclothes operations, and they could not get the detective squad. And what's convenient about this? What happened 3 days after this bill was proposed? Anti-crime was disbanded. Anti-crime was disbanded in New York City in the NYPD. Why? I heard all different kinds of scuttlebutt. Oh, supposedly Shay did it for the men and women. That's what we were told. The union said, oh, he did it for the men and women. He doesn't want them to get in trouble. Isn't that funny? Right now, we're having riots out there, and there's opposition to blue uniforms, and now we went after anti-crime. You know why they went after anti-crime? Because it was comprised mostly of big, white, burly men. It was another emasculation of the NYPD. Rich Rod, shout out to you, brother. Thank you so much. $10, coffee and donuts. Let's get a baker's dozen over here. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you. Thank you so much. That's why they disbanded anti-crime. And look, things were supposed to get better. Crime is far worse right now.
I still got my camo shorts. I got some jerseys too. We could jump out there, Eric. We just need a competent mayor to do so. So here's what the New York Civil Liberties Union statement on the passage of the repeal of 50A. New York, today the New York legislature voted to fully repeal New York Civil Rights Act Section 50A, which kept the disciplinary records of police officers hidden from the public. The repeal means that police departments across the state can no longer shield officer disciplinary and misconduct records from scrutiny, and the public can better hold officers accountable. In response, New York Civil Liberties Union issued the following statement from Executive Director Donna Lieberman. This is a historic win for New York and long overdue change to the most restrictive police secrecy law in the country. For decades, 50A has allowed police departments to hide the disciplinary records of abusive officers and to sidestep meaningful accountability. This repeal is the result of years of work by advocates led by families whose loved ones have been killed by the police and who were routinely rebuffed when they tried to find out whether the department was doing anything to hold these officers accountable. The NYPD invoked 50A to hide the long disciplinary record of Daniel Pantaleo, the officer. I'm not even going to say it because he didn't do it. The officer who arrested the criminal, the man who was breaking the law, Eric Garner, who had a heart attack and died because Daniel Pantaleo was never found guilty of killing. So this, again, is slander. Danny, if you listen to this, show this to your lawyer. Slanderous. The Garner family only found out about Pantaleo's record after it was leaked to a reporter. Too many other families and loved ones have faced those same barriers to justice. The repeal of 50A is a critical step towards justice for New Yorkers, especially Black and brown New Yorkers, who have historically been the main targets of the police abuse. The repeal will make it harder for police departments to cover up abuse and to look the other way when officers engage in gross misconduct. This reform comes at an urgent moment at the recent murders. Again, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Ahmaud Arbery, and others have forced people of all races, nationalities to finally wake up to the reality of police violence that Black people have been living with and fighting against for centuries. The brutal police attack on New Yorkers who have poured into the streets in protest over the past week have demonstrated all too well the need for systemic change. New Yorkers have sent a powerful message that the old system of police violence and impunity can no longer stand. The New York Civil Liberties Union is in solidarity with Black and brown New Yorkers across the state to continue the work. The repeal of 50A is just the beginning of the urgent and dramatic shift in policing necessary are to bend to the arc history towards justice.
Now, isn't the website for, I'm pretty sure, isn't the website for 50A the email? Isn't it FTP or something like that?
Yes, I will get to that. I'll bring that up.
Which is another problem. If anybody knows what FTP is, you know what it is, right? F the police. That's absolutely ridiculous. Where are the unions in this? Completely toothless lions. The fact that they have not attacked this. Under the Pat Lynch administration, now Pat Hendry, this should have been your number one fight. to protect and stand up for your police officers. Why else are they paying $51.84 on a bi-weekly basis? Sure enough, you can't represent them because they get their own attorneys when they're in a jam or a pickle. But why are we not fighting this? This is the pathway to corruption because this creates harm and danger for police officers. Absolutely ridiculous. All this vital information that you could get about a police officer, the information that you could garner and create your own file about a particular police officer if you choose to target that police officer. So this is not just harassment that police officers have to have a thick skin to actually withstand. This is a serious danger to the entire law enforcement profession with the NYPD. Absolutely. Every police officer, you must take note to this episode.
So, and how has it improved the life and safety of New Yorkers? Well, you could clearly see it here. You see the large dip in crime around 2018, and then it spikes a little in 2019, and it falls back down in 2020. And what happens in 2020 after this repeal? A straight line up all the way to 2024, where thousands, tens of thousands of more violent crimes have occurred on New York City streets. So you see that it actually didn't work as promised. It said that this was going to keep New Yorkers safe, and it hasn't. Now, again, I'm not knocking the law. I'm knocking how it was implemented, and I'm knocking how it's allowed to be utilized, and I'm knocking how it's utilized. So let's get into that. So after all this all comes out. Everybody's celebrating. It's an historic moment. Dermot Shay loves it. Everybody loves it, right? Nobody sees anything wrong with it. It's all doing great. A website emerges, 50a.org. Let's pull up 50a.org. So 50a.org is an open sourced data info, right? 50a.org. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to bring this up just yet. I thought I had it ready, but I didn't. Let me just pull that up. 50a.org. Here we go. Oh. No, I'm not getting it. But basically what it is 50A, you could go on this website, 50a.org, and you could put in anybody's name, any officer's name, retired, active, it doesn't matter, and they will pull up and it will give you a list of whatever open source information they have available, the city of New York has placed out there. So this website has pulled all of this information in.
You pull it up right now?
I'm working on it right now.
Yeah. Well, listen, the bottom line is the 50A, again, I don't agree with it because the question is who has access to it? What access do they get? Why? What's the purpose? Again, we go back to Giglio material. If anybody knows what exactly Giglio material is. So Giglio material, something that came out of the birth and the inception of this bail reform, goes along with discovery material. At a court case, a police officer's discipline record is accessible to the defense. Why? Because it shows the potential credibility or lack of credibility to that police officer when it comes to testimony in the case. To me, that makes sense. Do I like it? Not necessarily, but it makes sense. Defense has an opportunity, as you said earlier, to hold accountable your potential accuser. And even if the police officer is not the accuser in that particular case, but to make sure a case is handled properly and appropriately, to find out there's a potential technicality or see what the discipline record is, if it's reflective in a particular case. That makes sense. But just random and available and open to anyone in the public, it doesn't make any sense. What purpose? This is not about transparency. This is about putting police officers in a precarious position so that they do not do intrusive police work. Because if they do intrusive police work, they'll put themselves on this 50A and put themselves in danger and put themselves in further danger, make themselves unattractable in their own career and in the afterlife of the NYPD, in any other potential careers, or just in life in general. This 50A just completely demises a police officer's entire record forever. Unlike the clean slate where you have a second chance, a police officer has no chance.
So this 50A, we had questions about it originally, but it appears that it has been made by somebody outside. This is not a government-run website, right? Government said that your information could be accessed, right, through FOILs, through court cases. but this 50A website has emerged. So that's what I have up on the screen now. So you see right here, 50a.org, 50-a.org, right? Look up officer misconduct. Search by officer name or badge number, right? And it's look up NYPD precinct or unit, officers with most complaints, adverse credibility list from district attorneys, recently added and recently updated complaints, file a complaint with the CCRB review board, other ways to search CCRB data, and it gives a bunch of other different links. And then this database contains 488,000 allegations from 174,000 complaints through November 2024, along with other records of 91,900 police officers, right? So you could just go in here, you can write Eric Dim and search. And Eric Dim comes up. Eric Dim comes up. Here he goes, right there. Famous picture, former lieutenant, special assignment at PSA 7, also served 120, PSA 4, service started January 04, ended September 22, tax number, white male, and now all of his substantiated allegations, all of his disciplinary cases, all of his lawsuit data, any articles, 28 complaints, 115 allegations, 56 of them substantiated, along with every other one, whether it was closed, exonerated, unfounded, unsubstantiated, victim unidentified. It gives you this entire thing. Eric is a former member of the NYPD. He was never charged with a crime. These are administrative things. Why is this still active to the public? Why? So now Eric goes to get a job. Eric goes on a date. I just completely come to this website and I have inaccurate information. I have slanderous information, allegations that were made that I was proven to not be true. And yet they're still on here and still here when we look at Eric.
Shout out to my visual zone. It says CCRB complaint should be a badge of honor, Eric. Thank you so much, because it solidifies the fact that these CCRBs are missing a lot of context. When you look at CCRB, it doesn't tell you that, yeah, it says Eric didn't point his firearm. Absolutely, I sure did. I take ownership. I sure did. At a potential perpetrator that we had confidential information, had a firearm that day. We had an innocent bystander that was shot as a result of a gang rivalry problem that we had with this particular perpetrator. This particular perpetrator had already did time in jail for shooting another rival gang member. So absolutely, I point to my firearm. Doesn't give you context. Did Eric Dim deploy a strike at someone that was wanted for a shooting? Yes. And was not willing to go into the police and took a full swing at one of my cops? Yes. Did I strike that person in the face? Absolutely. That's what the CCRB doesn't tell you. Leaves out a lot of context. But also, if you have an opportunity, you can also see how everything swayed at 2018. You can see the climatical change. If you look at my record I think is the pinnacle case here. You can see a complete dichotomy. If you look, I started the job January 4th. January 2004. And if you look up to 2017, 2018, I was doing special operations most of my career, anti-crime sergeant, and I had some complaints, but very few. It was kind of sporadic. It was a byproduct doing intrusive police work. But if you look, 80% of my complaints came from 2018 to 2020. My last complaint was June 4th, 2020, the riots. That small span right there is where I received 80% of these complaints. That should be a red flag. That should have been problematic right there. And again, this record stays with me forever. I've never been charged with a crime, but you could go out and you could kill someone, and after 8 years, you will have a clean slate. So if I'm going for a job and someone else who killed someone is going for a job, and that person now has a clean record, who probably will get that job? My adversary, not me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this appears to be someone with a technical background that has created this website 50A that's been weaponized, that has weaponized the 50A law, the repeal of 50A, to emasculate the NYPD. So when we say the emasculation of the NYPD, I think what we're really saying is the misuse, the inadequacies of the law, the inadequacies of the repeal to actually protect officers, to actually give them due process, to fairly put out the proper information in the public. But this website appears to have been created by someone with a background in computing or coding or something of that nature, working with computers, and they are able to grab data from open source information. So if you go into the case closings, like here, you could see right here. I went to one of Eric's case closings, and it says how it was It was contributed by RW. Who's RW? I don't know, right? Source, FOIL response from the NYPD. So these are earlier ones, right? This was a case from a while back, right? And but there were other ones. There were other cases in here where you could actually see stuff. And if you Google properly, you will see an actual name appear on some of these. And I'm going to bring that up right now. Let me get back into my X and get that up on the screen. So I'm going to go on my X, and then up on the screen, you could see, and just before I even do that, what Eric was talking about is the email for 50a.org is contact f12@50a.org, right? This is the contact. So at first I'm thinking, is this a city-operated website? Are we paying money for this? But then when I saw that I'm like, I don't think it is. I think this is just a civilian who has weaponized the data. The public, as open source, is able to grab the open source data. So this is the website, F12. Eric, we know what F12 means, right? I mean, I don't think we have to curse, but so like when you see the website now, do you think that what would you think, like, before we go into this? Do you think that it's a civilian? Do you think that it's a government-run agency?
I mean, at this point, we never know, right?
Sad. It's a sad state.
It's right. Sad that we're actually laughing about it. It's sad, but absolutely, this is not a government agency. And I can't believe that the units at this point have not put all their efforts to stop it. Say, look at this. We're talking about transparency. This is the whole police officer accountable. Right there alone, that email is to create bias, create disdain, create hate. That's to target police officers. Eric, another great name. My name here. Shout out to you, brother. $1.99 to the podcast. Sure as hell getting a coffee and donut. You guys are great. Darren Aquino for New York City Mayor. Thank you so much for your feedback, brother. Your response. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So what I'm showing you here is this is actually another access of 50A, right? This is who we had on yesterday. One of the other guests we had on yesterday, member of the Finest Unfiltered, Marlon Bethel, retired, not even retired, excuse me, terminated non-disciplinary intelligence detective Marlon Bethel. Here's his 50A. And what do you see? You see the picture from the podcast, right? See him. That was what he was wearing. That was one of his earlier interviews on the podcast. So this is 50A. So this is how much this stuff's getting updated. It's getting updated frequently. But when officers are found not guilty later on, the accurate information is not getting updated. Nothing's getting expunged. Why are retired officers there? There's zero time period in this law where officers' stuff is being sealed for administrative. But for criminal, when we look at the Clean Slate Act, people's criminal records are being expunged. And no one has to do anything about that. So when you go into the metadata now of this 50A, right? What you see is, and I'm pulling this up, you see I have it circled. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but you see 50a.org, and it gives this match data, and it brings you to a different site. So you're able to see actually on some of these who actually put it in there. On the earlier ones, it wasn't just what did I say it was? RW or FB. What you could see.
RW, yep.
Yeah. So if you see on the top here, it'll say contributed by AB, right? Contributed by AB. That's all it says. But if you Google these, don't Google these. If you put these in Safari or a different search engine, things will come up like this. Ready? Document cloud, and you could see right there the document cloud, and that document is a 50A. It's an update, a case closing, right? It's a case closing sent to the 50a.org, from an officer to be uploaded to the 50A, like the case closing I just showed you from Eric. And it gives you a name there. And it says Eric Spishak Thomas, right? So when you look at that, you're like, okay, now this guy uploaded that document to the 50A. I'm like, all right, does he work for an organization? Is he the creator? I don't know, but it says his name right here, clear as day. So then I say, who is Eric Spishak Thomas? Right? Transparency works both ways, you know? So Google his name. Eric Spishak Thomas, right? Let's pull up this article and get into it a little bit. Hold on, let me stop this screen. I'm going to pull up an article where Eric Spishak Thomas.
While you pull that up, just want to say shout out to JF Dot, brother. Eric knows what F12 means, but I can't stop laughing. But didn't know what IMHO meant. Yes, brother. Thank you. In my humble opinion, I appreciate it. Listen, we laugh all the time. When we started doing this podcast, brother, I was a caveman when it came to social media. Never used social media with the job. You know, we were treated like children to be seen and not heard.
I pushed back at the word.
What's that?
I pushed back at the word. The use of the word.
But yeah, JF, shout out to you, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So that individual uploads a document to the 50A, right? So transparency works both ways, Eric Spishak Thomas. So then we Google your name. Google your name. What comes up? What comes up? This one article comes up here by Chris Gilardi. This is Focus. Bomb Goon Squad, subway cops who make a killing in NYPD overtime. November 16, 2022 article. Eric Adams pledged to cut overtime in half. Instead, his initiatives helped it soar to the second highest level on record. So, why is Eric Spishak Thomas' name here? So, let me read through the article a little bit. Okay, let's read through the article and see how this comes. So, Officer Andrew Riggle worked more overtime than anyone else in New York City in the police department fiscal year 2002 extra hours, akin to nearly 79-hour work weeks. Wow, does that sound familiar, Eric? Right? So,
what kind of shoes does he wear? Does he wear the admin shoes? Does he have the field shoes?
So, though exceptional, he was hardly alone. Riggle was the leader of a high-earning pack. The NYPD Transit Bureau K-9 unit, which patrols subway bomb-sniffing dogs and contained the police force top 9 active overnight workers. Riggle and 8 peers pulled in an average of 1,700 bonus hours in fiscal year 22, up 67%, 21 to 25. The K-9 cops are among the top earners in recent overtime. City budget reports break numbers. Working like a dog. They show a little chart here. The numbers reveal the NYPD's most frequent overtimers. Subway cops, a notorious goon squad, surveillance units, drug police. I love the word of the use of the word goon. The amount of leeway the NYPD is given to overtime budget is pretty extraordinary, said Linda Mezzanit-Panani, a director for Communities United. It is a prime example of NYPD budget bloat. So, tough on crime, the article goes further. And basically this article, it's going to tell you in here something about, and I should have had this in place, so I apologize that I don't, but it's going to tell you how it comes to get all of this data. And why I can't find it is beyond me at this point. But basically the data is being open sourced. So when you Google Spishak Thomas, his name is somewhere in here and I'm missing it. I apologize for that. But it's being sourced, open sourced by the same people. Another article comes out also by the Focus. This is in May of 32 by Chris Gilardi. And he says that the NYPD have gun unit trainees may have a history of excessive force complaints. Right. And I'm sorry, I lost all this shit.
Someone put it's at the beginning of the article. Christopher Dabrowski, thank you, brother. If it's there.
It's in the beginning of the article. I'm missing.
Yeah, that's what Christopher Dabrowski put. Thank you, brother. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm missing it. I can't find it. But anyway, this same person has given this. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. City budget report breaks down by which office appropriates overtime spending rather than which units actually spend it. But a New York focus analysis sheds new light. Using an open source program published by citizen watchdog Eric Spisak Thomas. Same person that uploaded that document to 50a.org. What do you think about that, Eric?
Well, that's my point exactly, right? So this podcast has done more and has created more impact with our voices from outside, with the help of our friends and listeners on this podcast. We built a network together, not just only in New York City, throughout the entire country, of actually standing up against entities like this and actually creating transparency. Exactly what you said. Transparency works both ways, right? It's not a one-sided mirror. But unfortunately, we haven't seen the unions. The unions could do this. The unions have the power. They have the money. This is a self-funded podcast, right? We take the time on our own to actually do our own investigations and research. John took the time on his own to get this article and just put 2 and 2 together. The point is, this is not about doing investigative work. The point is that the unions could do much better to fight for you. And it shows that they're in bed with the enemy and they're not taking a full stance. There should be numerous lawsuits for smear campaigns. Exactly what I've been saying. These civilian complaint review board substantiations are not updated on the 50A. If you're found not guilty in a trial, it does not reflect that. These allegations still remain there. So it's the appearance that you're still found guilty. It does not allow for context. So that's a huge problem. And look what we're doing from a self-funded podcast for what the unions could do with millions of dollars. That's why you have to ask yourself, where are these union dues going? They're in bed with the enemy. They're not doing anything. They're not fighting for you. They just make noise. And look, you heard it from Patrick Henry. They're packing courtrooms. That's all they're doing. They're toothless lions.
Yeah, and again, there's a second article here. And when you Google Spisak Thomas's name, this article also comes up. City, same reporter, and it sounds exactly the same. Watchdog, a watchdog came using NYPD data made accessible by citizen watchdogs. New York Focus has identified and published a list of officers who have taken to NYPD's publicly listed neighborhood safety teams training and courses. I believe his name is in this article as well. And when you go down it, but this is the same person, right? So Eric Spisak Thomas has provided to Focus through open source data two different types of data that are publicly sourced for this article. And he's also he also has placed data on top of 50a.org. So transparency should work both ways. We should know who runs 50a.org. Is it Eric Spisak Thomas? I don't know, but I know that he knows who does it. I know that he has access to put stuff onto the computer, onto that 50a.org website. So could it be him? Eric, what's your message? Well, we don't know that he runs it. We don't know what he does other than he's put those case closings on there. What's your message to Eric Spisak Thomas?
You know what my message is this? I don't hold Eric at fault. Eric is a citizen watchdog. He has the opportunity. He's afforded the ability to actually garner this information and put it out there. My message is to the NYPD. You have an 80-some-odd social media manpower team that's focused on this podcast, that's focused on other journalists that actually speak the truth and talk about the perils of the NYPD leadership. Why don't you take that 80-some-odd social media unit and target people like Eric and others to make sure that they're putting the proper information out there? And why don't you start suing them for putting out information that is slander and smear, complete smear campaigns that are hurting your police officers? Why don't you do your investigations to find out who these people are? And why don't you contact them and tell them that they're putting your police officers at risk, and start to actually combat this instead of fighting this podcast? So my message is to Eric, listen, you continue to do what you're doing because the police department allows you to do it. I get it. You've received no resistance and no reluctance at all on behalf of the police department, NYPD leadership, nor did he receive that from the unions. And that's a fact.
Yeah. So, and here you go on this in this article as well. It's this month, citizen watchdog Eric Spisak Thomas approached New York Focus with a list of officers who had gone NYPD training titled Neighborhood Safety Team Training 7-day course. So again, he is using another watchdog's open source program, which takes daily snapshots of NYPD officer portal and makes them searchable. So in this article, it's saying that it's not Eric Spisak Thomas actual data, but he's using data from another source. But we did see that he uploaded a case closing to it. And like I said, if you don't Google it, if you just Google, if you put his name in another search engine, you will see that he is the contributor for numerous items that have been placed on 50a.org. I don't blame him either. However, if we're going to put data out there, it should be the accurate data. So the data that he has access to is incompetent data from the CCRB. So the CCRB is held at fault. It's incompetent data from the NYPD. So the NYPD is at fault. So I think I have no problem with citizen watchdogs. I have no problem with Eric Spisak Thomas. But I have a problem with it's being updated regularly. Let's update it with the correct information. Also, I think we'd like to invite you on this podcast to come on and speak with us about this and what should be accessible to the public, why the public needs certain things on here, what you see the benefits of doing this is, and if you acknowledge that any harm is being happened to public safety, if it has in fact emasculated the NYPD like we're claiming. I think that, I think we labeled out a case and we've shown a lot how bad it's done. And then when we look at transparency, it should be the proper information. Why should retired officers' stuff still be on there? And why should inaccurate information be on your website? I believe that inaccurate information is slanderous. Often we make mistakes on this podcast. We correct them. We correct them because it's not right. If I say something that's wrong, I correct it. If Eric says something is wrong, it's corrected. You're saying that Eric was substantiated for sticking someone's finger up his butt. Now, you didn't say it. CCRB said it, but you posted it, and it's inaccurate. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest fight in this has to be accurate information, but this is information that should not be there forever. At some point, this information has to be redacted and come off your record just as the clean slate, and even more so than the clean slate. These are administrative allegations. These are allegations for the Civilian Complaint Review Board. These are discipline. This is an officer's jacket. This is his administrative record for employment purposes. Just think about it. If you go out there and you try to garner employment, when you go to an employer, a potential employer, what do they ask? Can we contact prior employers to get a resume or a jacket or file on you? They don't just probe and get that information. It's not open to public. It's always, can we? You have to give them permission to access those records. You have to give permission to a potential employer to contact prior employers. In many cases, you could opt and say no. That could hold you back from getting that job. But it's not just open to public view. Why is this open to public view? Why makes this any different? When you're doing and when you're working as a law enforcement professional, this is information that should be held to the NYPD. If a New York City police officer is out there looking to go to a different department, well, this is information that should be transferable from one agency to another. Now, I can understand that being an argument, but to be open to anyone in public view is just exactly what this title is. It's the emasculation of the NYPD. The repeal of the 50A puts police officers in such a precarious position. I'm sure at this point we probably have cases that there has been corruption because of the 50A. It hasn't been exposed to the public, but I'm sure there has been, and there will be more going forward in the future. And again, why does a police officer that worked in the 1970s era, why is there still open to public view? Tom Joyce, shout out to you. Tom Joyce says he hasn't had a complaint in 24 years. I don't know how many years you've been retired, but it's the most ridiculous thing.
Years.
24, yeah, right. But yet his complaints are open to the public if he has any. And that's the point. Why is it accessible? This is administrative. This is your employment. Marlon Bethel was wrongfully terminated by the police department. And he was terminated for not taking the vaccine. Has nothing to do with his discipline record. So why is his 50A continuously accessible to the public? And again, I say for who, for what, and why?
Exactly. And and my other question for Eric Spishak Thomas is: do you support the Clean Slate Act? And then how do you rectify the 50A? Do you support one and not the other? Do you support both? And I think what we're saying to the leadership, to the incoming police commissioner, to the mayor of New York City, to the unions, to the police leadership, I mean, are you just going to let this stand? You're just going to let cops be defamed and smeared in retirement, in life, while they're active? You have your active cops completely emasculated, created this thumbnail. It's a little boy standing there in a police uniform, titled "The Emasculation of the NYPD, the Repeal of 50A." If I was to create this years ago and I wanted to have a picture to see what a police officer was, there would be a big muscle-bound burly guy standing there, probably in a well-worn uniform, instead of a little boy in a very shiny, brand new uniform, because this is how the public is perceiving the NYPD currently. Is the repeal of 50A or this website the total emasculation of the NYPD? No, absolutely not. This is going to be a series. We'll keep exploring this. There's many pieces of legislation and policy that need work. This is one of them. We're not saying that you have to restore 50A. We're saying that there are items that should be dealt with. It should mirror a clean slate. When you retire, you're terminated, you're no longer a member of the New York City Police Department, you should also get a clean slate. After a certain amount of time, your records these are all administration. These are all administrative. None of them are criminal. So your records should be sealed after a certain amount of time. End of story. No reason for this to be open. We need some true leadership. We need people that care. Anything else on 50A before we go on to the next topic and finish up?
One more thing. That's the answer right there. We need true leadership. We have not yet heard what is the response of the police department leadership and what is the response of the unions. If you're that female police officer and you're confronted with your 50A by a member of Cop Watch, some other entity, or any public person with no reason other than to taunt you and your partner while you're standing post, what is the position of the NYPD leadership and the unions? What should that police officer do? Other than stand there and withstand the verbal abuse and just take it, what is that police officer supposed to do? Should that police officer leave their post to de-escalate the situation, as we love to hear that fine buzzword? Should that police officer just stand there, withstand that abuse, and have them distracted and divert their attention from doing actual real police work because they're on their post so that they can canvass the area? We have not heard a response from the police department. I want to hear a response from the leadership. What should that female police officer do when she's abused with her own record? Absolutely ridiculous. We never heard a response. We never heard any support. No backbone. That's a problem. There should be an immediate response from the leadership. That would be true leadership. We lack it. We don't have it.
There is currently no policy in place or no training in place on how to deal with known harassers of police officers. Now, you want to read my 50A from across the street. You want to read my 50A from 12 feet away. Probably, actually, let's make it 21 feet. It is what it is. It's the public. It's America. You can do and say what you want. However, standing close to me, harassing me, yelling in my face is distracting me from doing my duties as a police officer. And I think that any reasonable person could ascertain on body-worn camera, because you'll have the evidence right there, that they're distracting you from doing your duties from ensuring public safety that day for New York residents, whether it be for criminal, for traffic reasons, you're standing on a foot post, or you're responding to a 911 call, or you're patrolling, that would be an obstruction of governmental administration. That would be also break the law, known as harassment of a police officer. And those things should be utilized when things become egregious. Now, should there be warnings put in place? Of course. Hey, listen, I'm not going to tell you again. Get out of my zone of safety. Get out of my distance. You could say what you want, but you will do it. You will film me and say what you want from a distance. And if those orders aren't followed, then that is what is known as fail to follow a lawful order. And then you guys could go to your partners that you consistently tout in all 5 borough DA offices. You could go to your partners, right? Because they're your partners, right? And you could tell them that this needs to stop. This is unacceptable. It's a hindrance. It's emasculating our officers. It's having our officers not be able to perform their job properly, their functions properly, which will ultimately impact public safety, cause crime to rise, cause tourism to drop, cause businesses to want to flee, cause residents to leave. And we can't have it. And if you continue to allow this, I'm just going to go on the news tomorrow and let them know that you continuously drop these cases. But we're going to continue to back our officers to do the right thing, and we're going to indemnify them when the lawsuits come.
Well said, brother. I think that we nailed the 50A. I think that we hit it home here. The bottom line is that NYPD, you know what their response is? 0. They have an 80-some-odd social media unit. More than 80 persons in a social media. NYPD trained police officers are doing social media to combat this podcast because we give our opinion, to combat journalists out there that write in opposition to the police department. And yet, we have a 50A public view. John just pulled up that name in 2 seconds, where the NYPD has the resources, the tools, right, to supplement a police officer, to make sure that they're safe and to keep them free from danger. And what about the responsibility from the NYPD leadership, not only to keep police officers safe, but to keep their families safe, right? When a police officer's at work and they have all this vital information about you, who's vulnerable to this? My family, your family. That's the bottom line. So what is the NYPD leadership doing about this? 0. What are your unions doing about this? 0. And we continue to fund them while they fund the same politicians that support these acts that are in opposition to police department, that put you in these precarious positions, that make you vulnerable, that make it a dangerous and harmful environment for you as you do in policing. The same politicians that create that environment for you are being funded and campaigned by your union that you give $51.84 to on a bi-weekly basis. So think about that.
So before we wrap up and we all go enjoy our weekend on Friday evening, I think something that we really have to bring home. I think this kind of annoyed me when it came out last night. I'm still like kind of mind boggled about it. I didn't even want to bring it up on this episode, but you know, there's so much that'll go on over the weekend that we'll just never discuss it. I think it's completely unfair. I think we spoke about the person who was running around New York City streets, and they murdered 3 people while traveling around with 2 knives in hand, blood-covered, stained clothes. We called the Daniel Penny fact, why he was allowed to get there. We spoke about how the inept response from the NYPD, not able to apprehend him prior to committing the 2nd and the 3rd murder. And then we spoke about how we felt bad for this police officer who you could see in this photo here, standing there in uniform, being used by this administration. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, First Deputy Commissioner Tanya Kinsella, NYPD Deputy Commissioner Operations Kaz Daughtry, now NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Public Information yet again. I don't believe he's the Chief of Staff any longer. I believe someone else has been named. Tariq Shepard. You see Chief of Patrol John Schell. You see Kayla Mamalik, I don't know how to say her name, Mayor's Press Office, Keith Powers, City Council. You see the other guy from DCPI, Nieves, who was sergeant. Now he's a commissioner as well. And they're standing there, and they have this officer who is clearly very highly uncomfortable standing there. And they're using him as a prop at a press conference. And they're saying that he apprehended the individual. It was his hard work. He stopped the murders. He did this. He did that. He spoke very briefly. He didn't answer any questions. He stepped in the background. He was in a terrible, highly uncomfortable situation that this leadership put him in, that his union allowed. And then we get this article from the Gothamist. Federal security agents, not the NYPD, first apprehended accused serial stabber, officials say. Before we get in the article, Eric, because I didn't read the article, in full disclosure, this is going to be the first time I read it, but when I read the title, absolutely disgusted. And I could see the uncomfortability of that officer standing there the whole time. And I was like, man, I'm glad I'm not him. I'm glad I'm not in that situation.
I was thinking the same thing, brother. What did I say when we did the podcast in the episode where we talked about the serial stabber? I said they're using him immediately without any context, actually knowing this information that we have now that's come to light. And I didn't read the article either. So it's great. It's going to be completely organic. And we could all give our perspective. So this is a roundtable. This is Friday. We want you to weigh in. Put your comments. What you think about this. I thought the same thing. I said, they're using him, right? They're toting him as I was doing proactive police work. Look what the rank and file is doing. It's funny, right? Because they were able to overlook his beard. Now, I could care less about the beard. Honestly, I could care less. But it's funny. Now that the attention's going to come off the police department, he's going to feel their wrath. They're going to be so mad right now. He's probably going to get disciplined for that beard. But which is, I think, is ridiculous. They're going to put they're going to retaliate against him because they're going to be emotionally invested into this. But again, he did appear uncomfortable. He was completely used as a prop. You know, here's a guy with 19 years old talking about how great he is doing this proactive police work to try and deflect the realities that the NYPD leadership failed the public, that a homicidal, mentally ill maniac, emotionally disturbed perpetrator was able to span the city from east to west, entire Manhattan, in broad daylight, and commit 3 separate murders of people that are independent from each other is disgusting, and it's an epic fail. And for them to tote and say it was proactive police work was a complete abomination, more gaslighting, and they don't care, and they try to deflect it by saying, oh, look at the fine work of this police officer, to get your mind off the fact that the NYPD leadership failed. And then what happened the following day? The following day, a police officer involved in a police shooting, and John Shell did not immediately respond on the air to ask about what the resources and what help that police officer needs. Instead, he asked for his own escort. This is your real NYPD, your NYPD leadership.
Or lack thereof. Actually, you know who I missed in this whole thing? Tom Donilon. Tom Donilon was actually in this photo, but as you could see, the most insignificant police commissioner taking the reign from former disgraced NYPD commissioner Edward Caban. And you can't see him in the photo, right? But we do see the real police commissioner, PPO Daughtry, sitting there. So let's get into this article. Federal security agents were the one who apprehended a man accused of stabbing 3 people Monday, law enforcement officials said, despite Mayor Eric Adams only crediting the NYPD for the arrest earlier this week. Officials with the U.S. State Department's Diplomatic Security Service told Gothamists that agents assigned to protect foreign diplomat drew their weapons and ordered the alleged killer, Ramon Rivera, to the ground. The officials said Rivera was only handed to the NYPD after he was detained. The version of events contrasts with Adams' statements after the incident, where he blamed the justice system that continues to fail New Yorkers and praised his own department. The spree left 3 New Yorkers dead, put New York City residents on edge until the suspect was in custody. Rivera, 51, allegedly stabbed a 36-year-old construction worker in the abdomen on West 19th on Monday morning. 2 hours later, he allegedly stabbed a 68-year-old man on East 30th Street. About a half hour later, officials say Rivera stabbed a 36-year-old woman multiple times near the United Nations at East 42nd Street. That's when federal agents said they apprehended him. But that's not how the mayor described it. Hours after the incident, Adams praised Officer Garvey for putting himself in harm's way. If Officer Garvey was not there, these random acts of violence, this person conceivably would have continued, Adams said. He saved the lives of fellow New Yorkers. State Department officials said 2 of their agents drew weapons and ordered Rivera to the ground. They said Rivera complied, and only then did Garvey arrive to put Rivera in handcuffs. NYPD Assistant Commissioner Carlos Nieves confirmed that a State Department agent made first contact with Rivera with his weapon drawn, but only a few seconds before Garvey, he said. Garvey's body camera was captured, a federal agent giving Rivera's commands as Garvey was running towards the scene. The initial contact was with someone in a suit, he said, referring to the State Department agent. Garvey sees this contact and comes over. Garvey orders him to the ground. Officer Garvey handcuffs him. Officer Garvey detains him. Nieves said that Adams was not fully aware of the federal agent's involvement when he spoke to the press, but he added that Garvey endangered himself by approaching Rivera. I had other New York City police officers approach subject in the same exact scenario and had their noses cut off, Nieves says. What do you think, Eric?
You know, right now I want to laugh at this because I'm not surprised by this administration, the gaslighting, the lies. We continue to see lie after lie because they're trying to protect the failed leadership of the NYPD. That's what they're doing. This is a complete deflection. But this is actually more of a problem than people think. This actually could hurt the actual investigation. This actually could hurt the potential conviction. We have 3 lives at stake right now. 3 people lost their lives. There's 3 families suffering right now that lost their lives, innocent people, to a homicidal maniac. And the fact that Adams is going to lie to the public, that could create a problem at that case because the NYPD said that Garvey was the first to make contact, that Garvey actually made that apprehension. That's a problem when it comes to chain of custody. That could be a problem for Rosario material. That could be a problem for going down the case when it comes to technicalities with this case. Complete failure. Complete failure. Absolutely ridiculous. Hold this administration accountable. They are lying to the public. They've been lying that crime is down. They're trying to change your perception. They're trying to change the truth. And they did it by using this cop right here. And I feel sorry for Garvey that they put him in that predicament. That whole time you and I spoke about this. You and I spoke about it offline. Like, wow, it just looks odd. It looked odd. That police officer looked completely uncomfortable. But here's why.
So I didn't get a chance to watch this either, but I think we need to. So NYPD Chief of Patrol John Shell, you know, on his media tour, speaking for the NYPD, says we have to fix this. Goes on Newsmax that morning, or the next day, I should say. And let's see what John Shell has to say about it. I didn't watch this, so I don't know what he's going to say or not. We watched the press conference with Eric Adams where they focused in on Garvey. They put him in a bad situation. They used him as a prop. Officer Garvey, I still give you a shout out. You did absolutely nothing wrong. You were put in a terrible situation that I hope no member of this department, regardless of your rank, is ever put in again. You had to stand up with incompetent, immoral people with very low integrity. Very low integrity. People who have lied over and over again, and we've shown it here. And I'm not going to be shocked if we're going to hear more lies here right now, Eric. You want to say anything before I play
before you go into this, Michael Fried said problems the officer spoke as well. So I'm alluding to the fact that the officer possibly lied about the situation because of the position he was put in. I felt sorry for that police officer. Because if this police officer lied about the situation, he now put himself in a position where he could be held accountable from the DA's office. And the NYPD leadership and Eric Adams will not step in for this officer. Absolutely. I hope this officer does not get dragged into this. I feel sorry if they put him in that position. It's terrible.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. So let's hear what John Shell had to say about this. Here we go.
Welcome back. So on Monday, right here in Manhattan, we saw the dangers of soft on crime policies back on full display after a 51-year-old homeless man named Ramon Rivera wandered through the city in broad daylight on a stabbing spree. Before being arrested, Rivera killed 3 innocent people, including a 36-year-old woman just down the street from our studios. Rivera has a history. He's been arrested at least 8 times and was just released from prison last month.
Yeah, joining us now in studio to discuss, let's welcome in NYPD Chief of Patrol John Shell. Chief, we talk about this, unfortunately, way too much.
Yeah.
So Rivera, 8 prior arrests. He was able to be back on the streets. He took 3 innocent lives, broad daylight, right down the street from here. What's happened and what is going on? How do we fix this?
Look, I'll make it real simple. The criminal justice system in New York City is broken. This person should not have been on the street. These people should be alive today. And this is the tragedy of it all. When you really think about it in human terms, right? You have one male going to work, 36 years old, day laborer, loses his life. You have another man fishing right down the block here, presumably retired, 60-something years old, dead. You have a woman walking, taking care of business, dead. This should not have happened. This person should not have been on the street. This person should have been in jail. Plus, there's a mental illness component to that.
Yeah.
We have to fix this. These are lives. These are people. These are our neighbors. It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Unacceptable.
And you mentioned the mental health component to it as well. And Mayor Adams spoke about that as well in touching on what happened. Take a listen to this.
Idealism collides with realism when you have 3 innocent New Yorkers that are stabbed and murdered. That's a wake-up call for our criminal justice system and our psychiatric system. The street corner is not a psychiatric ward. It's not a psychiatric bed to sleep in the parks. We have to change our mindset.
So he talks about change. Will change happen? What needs to change?
We have to codify in law what we are doing as a city and state when it comes to mental health. We're talking about people in the street that we all see that are incapable of taking care of themselves. We have to change our philosophy of laws. We have to get our beds back in our psychiatric facilities. What are the clinicians doing? What by law should they be doing besides give them medicine, letting them walk out? So collectively, we have to fix this. And the mayor's spearheading this with what he's trying to do. So this all comes together with the criminal justice system, mental illness. And this is what we have to fix as a city and as a state to keep this the greatest city in the world.
It is, you know, and you see this walking down Fifth Ave, you see it on Madison, you know, these are things that you didn't see years ago, and you felt safe, and you don't even feel safe during a broad daylight. And obviously, we know officers are not safe. So another career criminal left an NYPD officer, innocent bystander injured. Gary Worth allegedly robbed multiple stores yesterday. So he was shot down by NYPD, who was on lifetime parole, sir, for firearms possessions, 17 prior arrests, including murder, robbery, and burglary. This is unbelievable.
And this guy's out in the streets.
And I think about you as police officers, and you go out and you do your job. You want to save people. You want to keep people safe. And what goes through your head, because you arrest these people and you know they're most likely going to be out and doing the same thing or worse.
Another colossal failure within the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
I was out in the street last night, and I'll tell you as a professional, when you hear that call and you know what it sounds like, your first reaction is, I hope he survives. And thank God he did. He did a great job. But
I just want to stop right there, because the first thing he did was call for an escort for him and Dr. Phil. That's the first thing he did. What do you got to say about what John Shell's saying so far?
I want to answer that, but before I do that, I just want to throw in this comment from Drone Ranger. You're absolutely right, Drone Ranger. I have not heard the cop's testimony as far as his actions in that arrest, but Drone Ranger put this, so I have to agree. Bullshit. If a supervisor tells you a lie about factual allegations and you follow orders and sign your name to it, that's on you. You're an adult with a gun and shield. That's on you if you knowingly lie, of regardless of who told you to do it. That's a great point. So I haven't heard his testimony. I'm just right now, John and I are talking about him standing there, being in that position of being used to say he was the one that apprehended him, and him having to stand there if that's not the truth. So that's the part we're talking about. Now we'll talk about John Shell. John Shell has this thing. I watch him every time when he does a media tour and they feel that they're confident and they did the right thing. He's pretty outspoken. And when they're lying about a situation and they've been caught with their pants down and they've completely failed, he starts to try to be stoic and poised, and he changes his demeanor completely, and we see it here. And that's an outright lie. You didn't care about the officer. You cared about you. Your first response was get you an escort. You can care less about the officers. That's who you were, that's who you are, and that's who you've always been. Got it, Juju?
So I just want to say right now, I don't think the officer did anything wrong. We played that press conference. I don't think the officer did anything wrong. He was there. He was on the scene. He didn't say, I was the first person there and I ran there. He said that he did it in conjunction with people's help. He sat there. You're not going to cut the mayor off. Anybody says that they are. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple of guys that I've worked with that would. I mean, I myself, I would just, I didn't say anything. I don't know what they're saying. I'm not going to just jump out and just like your career's over at that point. You're going to jump out and say that the mayor's lying and you know what they're doing. You know, you're not comfortable in it, but you didn't say anything wrong. He was there. He did place handcuffs on the guy. He didn't say anything wrong. He didn't perjure himself. So that's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, no, the mayor's lying. You know, I worked with a couple of guys that would have done that, but like that's not what I would have did. I mean, I don't think the officer did anything wrong. He was in a terrible situation. I don't think he lied at all. He was the first person to put handcuffs on him. That's it. How the Gothamists find out that the federal agents were there? Because I'm sure the paperwork showed it, and his body camera showed it. Not lying about it. Nobody lied about it. The only people that lied about it was the mayor and the police commissioner and everybody else. Because they have a habit of every day they go up in front of the camera and they lie on TV. Just think about this interview right here. I don't disagree with anything that John Shell's saying so far. Mental health needs to be fixed. It's not the police department's problem. They're letting people with mental health run around New York City streets. They're letting repeat offenders run around New York City streets. He's not lying. And there's nothing the police could do about that except to continue to arrest these people over and over again, continue to EDP these people that they're able to, and have them put right back out on New York City streets. He's not saying anything wrong here, but he's going to sit here and tell you how crime's down. He's going to sit here and tell you how the mayor's doing a great job. That's where he lies, and he does it every day, right? What he's saying right here, he's 100% accurate. He's 100% accurate. But then when he goes on to, but crime's down. This is the safest big city in America, and the mayor's doing a great job. That's when he starts to lie. And that's what they've become accustomed to. Eric Adams lies so much, he doesn't know how to tell the truth. Like if Eric Adams is moving his mouth, he's lying. He's just so accustomed to it that he actually believes it. And the same's true for John Shell. You come up here every day. He's on Newsmax every day, or Fox News, or some media station telling you how safe crime is, yet he's talking about multiple horrific incidents every day and talking about how this is a problem, how it needs to stop. Why does it need to stop? You're saying that everything's fine.
Well, that's the problem, right? So it's contradicting statements that we hear all the time from John Shell, right? We hear the portion that is the truth, and then we hear the lie that is to cover your own perception and to maintain a new truth. He said it before on prior interviews. How do they fight crime? By doing these media tours, by speaking and talking about what's the truth. Because she says, the anchor says, right? She says, we see it out there. We see all the mentally ill. It's not a safe environment for our cops right now. She's telling you that it appears crime is way up from what she sees. She's not saying she has the data. She's saying this is what her eyes are telling her. This is what she sees and what she hears. And with John Shell's, yeah, you're right. The social justice system is not working. It's broken. We have all these issues. You're right. The social justice system is broken. We have mentally ill all over the streets. And the police department, the rank and file, is doing their job exemplary as they're paid and trained to do. They're making those apprehensions. But as you're saying that, what you're doing is changing her perception, and you're telling her, no, her eyes are playing tricks on her. You're not seeing a problem out there. Crime is still down. The mayor is doing a great job. His plan is working. So how could you say it's a broken system, but it's working? Which one is it? And there's the lie right there. And that's what they continue to do. That's how they gaslight the public, by trying to change your perception. Basically, what he's telling us, no, you're not seeing a problem out there. There's no problem out there. The problem's taken care of. The mayor is doing a great job. Your eyes are playing tricks on you. That's what he's telling her.
Lifetime parole. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Everyone knows what that means. You get one more chance and you're out of here. Not 7 more chances. Not arrested 6 times this year. He should never have been out on the street. And mind you, when he's out in the street, he's robbing stores and firing rounds at people, just like he did twice last night. Wow. Our cop should not have been able to have to confront this person on a busy street in Jamaica, Queens, where people are shopping for the holidays. Unacceptable. And thank God he survived. He did a tremendous job last night when you see the video. And thank God he's okay. But again, this opportunity shouldn't have presented itself, because the system is broken. And that's what we need to fix. Enough is enough with this.
And we're also seeing a lot of migrant crime, a huge rise in spike in migrant crime, especially since New York City, places like Boston, Chicago, Denver, they've all become sanctuary cities as well. These people have nothing to do. They don't have jobs. So they're committing robberies, as you mentioned. And we're seeing this huge spike Do we see this go down with the new administration, do you think?
Look, we've taken on 225,000 migrants, and let's be clear, only a small portion are really adding to our crime in this city.
Right.
So we deal with them like any other person. We don't really care about your status as a police department.
Right.
You go to jail, you do your time. And we said if you're a migrant, then we can deal with you in a different way for violent crimes. But we've been dealing with it. It adds to our crime. I think it's slowing down a little bit from my point of view.
Okay.
But again,
Yeah.
we are the police department. We're here to protect the city, and that's it.
We were talking during the break about the last two incidents, one with the NYPD officer and the other with these people who were stabbed. There were people there who tried to, flag you down, these innocent bystanders. Talk to us a little bit about that.
That's a great point. It can't be lost in this discussion. We always say if you see something, say something, and try to do something. 2 days in a row, New York is going about their business, saw something, said something, and did something. So one cab driver flagged us down following the person who's stabbing people. Our cop standing at the UN did his job, got involved. Last night, a person sees the robberies. They follow him, they flag our cops down, and they get involved. So kudos to the community of New York City for getting involved like we ask.
Could it be dangerous for someone to get involved? When should they kind of hold their horses on getting involved in situations?
Look, it can always be dangerous. At least
Yeah.
if you see something, just say something.
Right.
If you want to get involved, be very careful. But, thankfully they did just by following
Absolutely.
and grabbing the cops. That's involvement.
And taking notice and paying
taking
attention to
notice
what's going on.
and seeing what's around you and getting involved. So the community, everybody in this community, you and us, my family, your family, they're force multipliers by their eyes
Yeah.
to help us out.
And everybody has a phone. And I know we walk the streets, we see police officers all over,
Yeah.
which does make us feel a lot safer, especially when you're concerned when you see a lot of these
Yeah.
people
Much
walking around the
appreciated
streets.
from the New York City residents. I'll take all the help we can get.
Yeah.
All right, Chief Chell, thank you so much
you.
for taking the time.
All right, so that's Chief Shell. Not a terrible interview, but again, omission of facts is a lie, right? And we're told, and that's what I heard there. Omission of facts, as usual.
I'm sorry, I can't help to laugh. Verona Electron, if you see food, eat food. Listen, what is he saying? It sounds great. I mean, he does a great job of manipulating facts, right? He does great. He's telling you the truth. Yeah. Listen, it's a broken system. People responded. They saw something, they said something, they did something. But what he's not telling you is that the NYPD leadership has completely failed. I don't expect him to say that. But what he does tell you is he tells you he panders to Eric Adams. He panders to the administration. He said, the NYPD, we don't care about their status. I'm sure if tomorrow Donald Trump was not a president, Donald Trump was the mayor of New York City, and he said, we're going to work with our federal partners, and we're deporting these illegal families, and we're deporting these illegal military-age males, and we're deporting these illegal juveniles that are committing robberies, I'm sure John Shell would say the NYPD wants to deport these illegal military-age males. The NYPD works with their federal partners. John Shell says what Eric Adams says. He just regurgitates what he's told to say.
Yep. So just real quick before we get off, let's just hit this article real quick because it plays in. This is in regards to the cop being shot 2 nights ago when John Shell and Kaz Daughtry were running around with Dr. Phil asking for escorts in the middle of it. So New York City judge should resign after freeing career criminal who later shot hero cop in robbery shootout. Politician, right? So I believe this is a little video from inside the bodega where it shows the man approach with a firearm. Mayor Eric Adams should demand the resignation of a Queens judge who cut an ex-con loose nearly 3 months ago before he wounded an NYPD cop in a deadly shootout. An irate city lawmaker said Thursday. Councilman, they didn't put Democrat here because the Democrat publications have been blasting the Post for calling Bob Holden a Democrat, but he is a Democrat. Democrat Councilman Robert Holden said in a scathing statement, Queens criminal court judge Edward Daniels, who was appointed to the bench by Adams Thursday in April, dropped the ball when he released career criminal Gary Worthy without bail. Despite pleas from prosecutors in Melinda Katz's office in Queens and a parole officer to lock him up. Worthy allegedly tried to rob 2 Jamaica businesses on Tuesday before he shot and wounded a 26-year-old woman and NYPD cop, Rich Wong, who returned fire and killed the ex-con, excuse me. Yet Daniels decision have shown a stunning lack of judgment, he railed. Denying requests to retain someone with Worthy's violent record does not reflect the integrity we need in our judges. Mayor Adams must act swiftly to remove the judge he appointed before more violence occurs. A rep for Adams, whose administration is the subject of a federal probe that has raised questions about the choice of aides and staffers, said the mayor is outraged over the situation involving Worthy, but argued his owner can't order a judge to resign. This is a prime example of a criminal justice system failing our city, and while demanding the resignation of a judge is not a power the mayor has. We are hopeful the criminal justice partners will better be collaborators with us in the future, a City Hall spokesperson said in a statement. The Post reported that Worthy was on lifetime parole with 2 stints in state prison and a rap sheet with 17 arrests when he went before Daniels on August 27th. Worthy's parole officer told the judge that he had not showed up for required meetings for him in 3 months and asked Daniels to hold him without bail in Rikers, while Queens prosecutor requested that Worthy be held on $120,000 bail on the new felony assault and burglary charges he faced. Instead, Daniels ordered Worthy be released without bail. Earlier this month, Worthy, whose prison time included sentences for manslaughter, was arrested again on drug and resisting charges, remained free. It was a dangerous error to release this individual after he committed violent crimes while on lifetime parole, 3-Hair Hendry said in a statement Thursday. NYPD PBA President Pat Hendry said. I read that wrong, sorry. The judge responsible should absolutely be held responsible, Hendry said. It's time to take a careful look at the process by which judges are placed on the criminal bench. We need a fair-minded judges who prioritize public safety. In a statement to the Post Wednesday, spokesperson for the State Office of the Court Administration, which oversees the judicial system, says the agency does not comment on bail matters. Eric, what do you think about this?
So here we can actually reflect and piggyback on John Chell's statement in his past interview on Newsmax, right? That's what we're saying. He's actually right. It is a broken system. The legal justice system, Lady Justice is supposed to be blind. She's supposed to be blind, but unfortunately politics has infected our political system. I'm sorry, our justice system. Politics has completely affected it. So no longer is this justice system blind. It's a criminal-first society. You and I continually have our finger on the pulse. So we constantly say that. So this is a part we could actually take some heat off the police department right now and say, yes, it's a broken system. Absolutely. And Pat Hendry's only response is we're going to packed courtrooms. This is a major problem. This puts the police officers in a very precarious position, makes it more vulnerable. We see it right now. Police officers assaulted at a high rate. And this complete savage thug cretin took a shot at a police officer. This is a failure on the judges. The police department, along with the politicians, have to hold these judges responsible. How do we do that? By voting better, by making sure our unions do the proper endorsements, that we do the proper public endorsements. But where is this campaign money going to? It goes to Democrats who are in opposition that are polarizing to the police department, which includes judges. This is a major problem here. This bail reform is a huge problem. We've been saying that. We've never said, yes, we're very critical of the police department, the upper echelon, the leadership. We don't say that the bail reform is great. It's absolutely terrible. But the police department holds their own responsibilities. But when it comes to a cretin, savage animal like this judge is absolutely to blame. Actually, the loss of life, the demise of this adversary is actually the judge's responsibility because Wong did his job and he put that perp down to save his life and save the lives of others. But if this judge had not released this cretin, he'd still be alive and he would be doing time. He would be in jail where he belongs.
I mean, I think the bigger problem when we look at all this is the justice system needs to change. I hear often, I've been hearing for 3 years, Eric Adams is great for us. Eric Adams is a friend to the NYPD. Eric Adams cares about the NYPD. Eric Adams cares about public safety. Do we think that this judge should have been appointed by Eric Adams? Is anyone honing in on that fact that Eric Adams appointed this person? Do you think that this person didn't have scenarios in the past that would suggest that they would release a person on lifetime parole who was committing violent crimes out on New York City streets numerous times? Yeah, I'm going to say, yeah, that's the reason that Eric Adams appointed him. That's why Eric Adams appointed him. So when John Schell and Pat Hendry and the rest of you cucks go out there and you're talking all this smack about how you care about cops and how what a great job Eric Adams is doing, just hone in on all of his appointments. Corrupt, incompetent, unqualified, inept, have a history of not liking the police, have a history of not doing the right thing, have shady pasts. These are his appointments. They're terrible. Absolutely terrible.
My visual zone is spot on. Spot on. It says Judge Daniels was a public defender with Brooklyn Defender Services for over 12 years. They knew who he was, and just like you said, John, and Mayor Adams appointed him anyway. Exactly. That's the point. That's why we always say in this podcast, you know, we hear from cops constantly in confidence, oh, Eric Adams is great. Really? Is he? What's he doing for you? He made your life harder out there.
He's terrible. Eric Adams is terrible. This is Eric Adams. This is who he is. Remember what he said about him and Alvin Bragg? Me and Alvin Bragg are one and the same. Our vision on public safety is one and the same. This is who he appointed, exactly. So thank you, my visuals. I didn't get the comment. I didn't see it. But yes, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. This is what's going on. Eric Adams is failing New York City. Bill de Blasio, like I said 1,000 times, drove the car to the cliff. He was looking over at the cliff. Eric Adams jumped in the driver's seat, punched the gun, and drove that car right off the cliff. And he continues to do it. This is disgraceful. It's a disgrace. Bob Holden, you too. You should be telling Eric Adams to resign because he's the real problem.
And so is NYPD leadership. We see it. We really put on the stage today. Dermot Shay and his successors have all been failed leadership. Now, one person has stood up for the members, for the rank and file. That one has stood up to the mayor and said that this is what we need for our rank and file moving forward, that these are bad policies. These politics are creating a harmful environment. This 50A has deteriorated the life of law enforcement, has deteriorated their careers, and put them in a precarious position where they could be harmed and they're in extreme danger. Right now, we've been saying it. We've been saying it constantly. Our finger is on the pulse. You have to say the same thing. We have to put pressure on these unions. These unions are toothless lions. All they can say is that they go into packed courtrooms. They actually need to stand up and make real change, and they need to start fighting. The question, what does fighting look like? Fighting looks like by actually speaking to legislators, doing what we did here today, get information on who's putting information out there that is actually putting these cops in harm's way, putting our efforts towards transparency on both sides.
Yeah. And visual zone, you are correct. I apologize. I take that back. Holden did call for Adams to resign like 3 months ago. Yes, he did. He did. You're right. I apologize. He should be doing it every day, though. He should be doing it every day like the rest of us. But listen, I think this was long enough. It was a Friday show. Oh, we missed somebody yesterday, and I want to apologize to who it is. Driver's Seat donated $9.99 to the podcast yesterday,
Yes.
right at the end of our stream. We called it after we were already down. So shout out to you, Driver's Seat. Appreciate that. And other than that, I don't really think I got much. I think that, I hope Eric Spishak Thomas, I hope you hit us up. Hit me up in the DMs. Let's get you on this show. Let's get your thoughts. We want to talk to you. We want to see how we can improve your watchdog and how we can make things better, not only for New York City residents, not only for the members of New York City Police Department, but everybody who enters New York City streets or who has a love and affection for New York City. So hit us up. We'd love to have you on. I don't got anything else. Eric, you got anything?
Sure. One last thing. Please check out my X account. Check out John's X account also. And support the tragic death of Dorlis Ramos. She is the girlfriend of a police officer from PSA 8 in housing. She was killed by a drunk driver. Please donate to her family. Donate to her tragic loss. She needs help right now. Police officer from PSA 8 needs help. Her name is Dorlis Ramos. Check it out on our X accounts. It's terrible. It's tragic. Please check it out. She was killed by a drunk driver in the Bronx. Please put your finger on that. We appreciate it. And with that, have a great weekend out there. Enjoy your Saturday and Sunday. We'll see you Monday, 8:05 live Eastern Time. Check us out. Thank you so much. Like and subscribe. Repost this space out there. We'll see you soon.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901-BLUE. That's 888-901-BLUE.